Yo, what's good, guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today's story time is one of those where I look back and just think, man, what an idiot I was. So, yeah, get ready for that. If you enjoy it, leave a like on the video and let's just jump right into it. Today's story is about the time I greened out. Now, if you don't know what greening out is, you'll learn soon enough. It's definitely not a fun experience, and it's one of those moments that taught me a lot about my own limits. Anyway, let's get into it. This story takes place when I was 16 years old. Back then, I was in a weird spot with school. I was getting closer to dropping out, but I hadn't fully committed to quitting yet. I was still going on and off, depending on the day and how much I felt like dealing with the grind. My mom was doing her best to get me to finish, either graduate or at least get my GED, but I was just not feeling it. At that age, I didn't care much about school, and I was kind of living in my own world, more focused on making YouTube videos and hanging out than worrying about tests and homework. So, it all starts off as a regular day. I wake up, get out of bed, and actually manage to get ready on time. I took a shower, ate some breakfast, and had a bit of extra time before my bus came. It was a pretty relaxed start, and everything seemed fine. I got on the bus, got to school, and that's when my routine kicked in. Instead of heading into the school right away, I would always take a detour to the parking lot where my friends parked their cars. My bus would get there like 30 minutes early, and I wasn't about to sit in the school cafeteria with nothing to do. So, I'd head over to the parking lot to hang with my friends before class started. That day, I walked over to the parking lot and I saw my friend Jacob's car parked there. A couple of my other friends were already inside, Jason and Ryan. So, I hop in, dap them up, and immediately realized they're already smoking. They were passing around a fat backwood at like 6:30 in the morning. I was like, damn, you guys are really getting right to it, huh? Now, I'd smoked before school before, but it was usually just a hit or two, just enough to take the edge off. But these dudes were going all in. This backwood was massive, packed to the brim, and they were already a few hits deep. I thought, why not? And decided to join in. I took a few hits and we finished that backwood together. By the time it was done, I was already feeling it, way more than I should have been. I was on another level, definitely way too high for a school day. Just as I was about to step out of the car, Jacob was like, hold up, we're not done yet. He pulls out another backwood, another massive one, and I was just like, bro, I don't know if I can do this. He gave me that look, like, come on, you got it. And after a few seconds of convincing, I caved. I took the backwood, hit it, and kept going. And by the end of that second one, I was completely gone. I was nauseous, dizzy, my vision was fuzzy, everything was just not okay. After we finished the second backwood, we all piled out of the car and started walking toward the school. I was wobbling, trying to keep it together, and I looked over at my friend George, who was also clearly not okay. I was like, dude, I really do not feel like going into school right now. And George looked back at me with these sad, bloodshot eyes and said, bro, I don't even know what class I have first period. I told him to check his schedule, but he was so out of it he couldn't even remember where his schedule was. We both just started laughing like idiots, stumbling our way into the building. So I make it to my first period class, which was history. I said goodbye to George and wished him luck finding his class, and I walked in. I went straight to the back of the room. We didn't have assigned seats, so I figured the back was the safest spot where I could lay low and not attract attention. I put my head down on the desk because I was feeling super nauseous and I just wanted to try and sleep it off. But of course, my teacher noticed me almost immediately. She walked over, tapped me on the shoulder and was like, Austin, what are you doing? I lifted my head up and she looked right at me. She could see it in my eyes, red as hell, barely open, and my face probably looked like a ghost. She just looked at me and said, what is wrong with you? And in that moment, I panicked. I didn't know if she could smell the weed or if she just thought I was sick. I tried to play dumb and said, what do you mean? She looked at me like I was the biggest idiot she'd ever seen and said, you reek. It hit me right then. She knew. There was no point in trying to deny it. But I tried anyway because, well, I was 16 and stupid. I said, no, I swear, I just walked by some people smoking outside. I didn't actually smoke anything. She wasn't buying it. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, don't lie to me, your eyes are so red. She wasn't wrong. My eyes were insanely red, like there was no hiding it. So I just looked at her and begged, please don't tell the principal. Please don't make me go to the main office. I feel so sick. I think I might actually throw up if I try to walk. She looked at me for a second, probably deciding whether or not I was worth the trouble, and finally said, fine, but you're staying after school with me for a week. You have detention. I nodded. Fair enough. And she walked away, leaving me there to wallow in my own misery. Right after that, everything got so much worse. I don't know if it was just the fact that I'd been caught or if the weed was hitting me even harder, but I knew I was about to puke. The room was spinning, my head felt like it was filled with concrete, and my stomach was doing flips. I knew I had to get out of there, so I got up as quickly as I could and started heading for the door. My teacher called after me. "Where do you think you're going?" And I just blurted out, "I'll be right back. It's an emergency." I made it out into the hallway, but I didn't even make it to the bathroom. I dropped to my knees right there in the hallway and just puked everywhere. It was so bad. Thankfully, it was between classes, so no one else was in the hallway. But as soon as I finished, I heard the classroom door open behind me. I turned around, still on my knees, and saw my teacher standing there. The entire class was staring at me from behind her, and I could hear them all going, "You!" I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. My teacher came over and asked, "Austin, are you okay?" I looked up at her, wiped my mouth, and said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just got a little sick to my stomach." She sighed and said, "You need to go to the nurse, now." I tried to tell her I was fine, but she wasn't having it. She said, "Go to the nurse, get some water, and take it easy. Don't worry about class today. Don't worry about detention today either. We'll start tomorrow." I nodded and thanked her, and she went back to the classroom while I dragged myself down to the nurse's office. When I got to the nurse, she could tell right away that I wasn't in good shape. She asked what was going on, and I just told her, "I threw up in the hallway. I don't feel good at all." She had me lay down on one of the little beds in her office, gave me some saltine crackers and water, and told me to rest. I ended up staying there for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, until I finally felt a little bit better. Then they sent me back to class. The rest of the day was rough. I had a massive headache, and I still felt nauseous for most of the day. It wasn't until the last couple of periods that I started to feel somewhat normal again. And yeah, that was definitely one of the worst experiences I've ever had greening out. I was such an idiot back then, and of course, it had to happen at school, of all places. So, moral of the story, don't smoke a ton of weed before school like I did. It's not worth it. I was a dumbass, and I paid the price for it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this story time and got a good laugh out of my misery. If you did, please leave a like on the video, I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today's story time is kind of funny, kind of crazy. It's got a little bit of everything in it. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to leave a like and let's just get into it because, yeah, this one is a wild ride. So today's story takes place during my freshman year of high school. Freshman year was an interesting time for me. It was my first year of high school, as it is for everyone when they're in 9th grade. And honestly, things were going pretty well for me at the time. I wasn't failing my classes yet, I had a good group of friends, and overall, life wasn't bad. I had this one friend though, and we'll just call him Jacob. Now let me tell you, Jacob was a troll, and I mean the biggest troll I knew. Any chance he got to mess with me or someone in our friend group, he would take it. I'm talking pranks, dumb jokes, anything to annoy us or inconvenience us, he'd do it. That was just who Jacob was. So, one morning in freshman year, I woke up, got out of bed, took a shower, got ready for school. The usual routine. I got to school, walked in, and found my friends at the same spot they always were, hanging out by the lockers. We had this little group and we'd usually just stand there for about 10-15 minutes until the first bell rang, talking and joking around. More and more of our friends would show up and we'd just hang out until it was time for first period. We were standing there talking like normal when Jacob showed up, about 5 minutes after me. He walked up to me, patted me on the back and was like, "Yo man, how you doing?" But when he patted me on the back, something felt off. It didn't feel like a normal pat on the back, it felt like something broke in his hand. Then I felt my shirt get wet and immediately I started smelling something awful. It smelled like a skunk had died right on my neck. I turned around, looked at Jacob and I was like, "What the hell did you just put on my shirt? It reeks." And he just started dying laughing. So did the rest of my friends. I was like, "What the fuck?" And I already knew what it was. It was a stink bomb. They used to sell these little glass capsules at the mall, or maybe they were plastic, but you would break them and they'd release this liquid that smelled absolutely terrible. He bought a skunk-scented one, and it legit smelled like a mix of skunk and weed. It was nasty. I was pissed. It was all over my shirt, and I didn't have a spare shirt to change into, so I knew that for the rest of the day, everywhere I went, I was going to smell like straight up skunk. I started freaking out. I pinned Jacob against the locker and was like, "What are you doing? Why would you do that?" But he just kept laughing. He couldn't even get a word out because he was laughing so hard. And of course, the rest of my friends were laughing too. I was just like, "Man, fuck all of you." And then the first bell rang, so I had to go to class. I put my hoodie on, hoping it would cover up some of the smell, and I headed to my first period class. As soon as I walked in, my teacher got a whiff of me and gave me the dirtiest look. I don't know if it was because I smelled bad or if she thought it was weed, but either way, she was not happy. I sat down in the back of the class so no one could smell me, and I managed to get through first period pretty much okay. A few people gave me weird looks, but nothing too crazy. Then I went to second period, and that's where things really kicked off. Second period was my English class. I walked in, sat in the back again. We didn't have assigned seats, so I sat as far away from everyone as possible because I didn't want anyone to smell me. One of my friends tried to sit next to me, and I was like, yo, don't bro, just don't. He asked why, and I was like, I got a stink bomb broken on my shirt. You don't want to sit next to me. He was like, oh, okay, appreciate the heads up. And he moved to a different seat. About halfway through second period, I noticed my teacher kept giving me weird looks. I knew it was because she could smell it. Then she went over to her desk, picked up the little classroom phone, and called the main office. She was pretty far away, so I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I had a feeling it was about me. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, the school security guard walked into the classroom and said, Austin, come with me. I got escorted up to the main office. On the way there, I looked at the security guard and asked, why am I getting escorted to the main office? What did I do? He said, I don't know. I'm just here to bring you up. You'll find out when you talk to the principal. I was like, the principal? The principal wants to see me? He was like, yep. I asked, for what? He said, I don't know. They didn't tell me. I'm just bringing you up there. So, he brought me up to the principal's office and I sat down. The principal immediately gave me the dirtiest look. His eyes said 1,000 words. Actually, they said 4 words. You smell like shit. That was the look he was giving me. So I just told him, listen, I know I don't smell good. Someone broke a stink bomb on my back. I'm not happy about it either. He goes, a stink bomb? I said, yeah, you know, those little plastic capsules. My friend broke one on my back and now I can't get the smell off. No matter what I do, it just smells really bad. He looked at me and said, Austin, your teacher called you up here because you reek of marijuana. She thinks you smoked it right before coming to class. I was like, marijuana? He was like, yeah, you know what that is. Don't play dumb. I said, I know what it is, but that's not what she was smelling. It's a stink bomb, a skunk-scented stink bomb. He goes, whatever. If it really is a stink bomb, then you won't have any problem with us searching your bag, right? I said, go for it. Now, I can't lie, there was a part of me that wanted to be like, no, I don't consent to a search, just to give him a hard time, but they probably would have found a way to search it anyway, so I just said, fuck it. They brought the school cop in, and he gave me an even dirtier look because he could smell it too. This dude starts opening my bag and going through everything. Sure enough, he didn't find anything but a bunch of crumpled up papers and snack wrappers I hadn't thrown out yet. Yeah, my backpack was very disorganized, to say the least. He's going through it, throwing everything on the floor, dumping it out, searching every little pocket. He's really trying to find something. He ends up obviously finding nothing. He looks at me and says, why don't you just make this easy and tell me where the hidden pocket is, where you keep your weed? I started laughing and he got pissed. He was like, you think this is a laughing matter? I know you have it. Where is it? I said, sir, someone broke a skunk stink bomb on my back. That's why I smell like weed. He goes, that's bullshit. Just tell me the truth. I know you have some on you. I said, you know, officer, I don't really like these accusations. You're acting like it's a fact that I have weed on me. I told you the truth. You didn't find anything in your search, so let me go. Then he had me empty my pockets because apparently he hadn't done that yet. So I emptied my pockets and sure enough, there was nothing in there except my phone. He ended up finding nothing and he was pissed because he thought I was hiding it really well, like it was in some secret compartment in my backpack or something. They called in another school cop. Another cop came up to the office, searched my backpack again, searched me again, and then they called my mom. My mom had to come in and all 3 of them found nothing. I told them all the same story, but they wouldn't take no for an answer. They just kept pushing and pushing. Finally, I was like, listen, Jacob was the one who broke the stink bomb on my shirt. Call him up here and he'll tell you, or check the camera. You can see it happen. These idiots actually went back and checked the security camera footage from that morning. Sure enough, at 7:45 a.m., there was Jacob coming into the school entrance, patting me on the back, breaking the stink bomb on my lower neck, and then me freaking out and pinning him against the locker. Needless to say, they realized they were wrong and that I was telling the truth. But these assholes didn't even say sorry. The school cops just left. My mom said bye and that she'd see me later at home, and when it was just me and the principal, he goes, alright, you can go back to class, and listen, stop playing with stink bombs with your buddies, okay? That could get you suspended. I said, I didn't even break the stink bomb, it was Jacob. You saw it on camera. How is it my fault that I got pranked? He goes, well, I know how your friend group is. You guys are always doing this stuff to each other, so just don't encourage it, okay? I was like, whatever. He said, go back to class. So I left the office, went back downstairs, and my second period class was just about to end. I went up to the teacher's desk, grabbed the assignments I missed, and looked at her. I said, "Hey, thanks for calling me up to the principal and making me get searched 3 times. Really appreciate that. Thank you." She gave me the most guilty look, didn't say a word, and I just left. And that was that. There's kind of a part 2 to this story, but I'll probably tell that tomorrow. So yeah, get ready for that. But that's where this one ends. Moral of the story: don't go breaking stink bombs on people's clothes. It's not okay, especially in a public place like school where they don't have a change of clothes. I literally had no other option but my gym clothes in the locker room, which smelled like sweat and gym, so that would have been even worse. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today's story time is absolutely fucking wild. Have you ever stumbled upon some crazy shit on someone's computer that made you go, what the actual fuck? Well, I have, and today's story is all about that moment. If you enjoy it, please leave a like on the video and let's jump into it. Also, quick plug, I dropped a new song a couple of weeks ago called Adios, and if you haven't checked it out yet, go do that. It'll be the first link in the description. But, alright, let's get into it. So, today's story takes place when I was 18 years old, still living at home in New York. It was right before I made the big move to LA. My friend group back then was completely different from the one I have now, like night and day. Honestly, out of that group, I think I only still talk to maybe 1 or 2 of them. Not because anything bad happened to most of them, we just drifted apart. You know, life just takes people in different directions. But the guy in today's story? Yeah, I'm not friends with him anymore for a pretty specific reason. And while it wasn't solely because of what happened in this story, it definitely made me see him in a different light. Not in a he's a bad guy kind of way, but more like, wow, I really didn't know you were into that. So, let's stop beating around the bush and dive into it. This story all kicks off on a regular day when I was 18. I was sitting in my room, just doing my thing, working on a YouTube video. Actually, it's kind of ironic because the video I was working on that day was about catching a friend watching some adult entertainment on his computer. Yeah, you know where this is going. Turns out that was just foreshadowing because on that very day, I ended up catching another friend doing something even weirder. So I'm sitting there editing when suddenly my phone rings. It's my friend, we'll call him Joe. Joe was a couple of years older than me, so he was about 20 at the time. I pick up the phone and he's like, "Yo, what's up, man? What are you up to?" I tell him, "Just working on a YouTube video, you know, same old, same old." And he goes, "Oh yeah? What's the video about?" So I tell him, it's about catching an old friend watching some saucy stuff on his computer. Joe laughs and says, "Oh man, that's fucking embarrassing." And I say, "Yeah, a little bit, but it happens." Then Joe gets all cocky and says, "Yeah, not to me." I'm like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, I've never been caught doing anything." He was sounding like he was on some kind of high horse, like he was above everyone else. So I asked him, "You've never watched porn?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, but I'm not a fucking weirdo about it." I shit you not, he actually said, "I'm not a fucking weirdo." And I'm thinking, alright Joe, whatever helps you sleep at night. Anyway, I didn't want to keep that weird conversation going, so I changed the subject. He asks if I'm doing anything later and if I want to hang out. I was like, "Yeah, sure, what do you want to do?" He says, "I'm thinking about having a bonfire, you down?" Of course I'm down, so we plan to meet up at his place around 8:30. I finish editing my video, upload it, read some comments, you guys know I love reading the comments, and then I get ready to head over to Joe's place. When I get there, there's already about 5 other people there. It's Joe, me, and a few of our high school friends. We start the bonfire and everything's just chill. We're sitting around the fire, telling old stories, having a few laughs, just the usual. Then Joe brings up YouTube. He's like, "Yo, how's the channel doing?" I tell him it's going well, and he asks, "What kind of views are you getting these days?" So, I tell him, and he's all like, "Damn, that's sick, man. You really have a lot of fans." I just kind of laugh and say, "Yeah, I guess so. It's pretty crazy." Then Joe asks me what video editing program I use for my videos, and I tell him. He's like, "Yo, could you maybe install that on my computer?" Since I can remember, Joe always wanted to get into YouTube. He didn't want to do story times like me, but he was super into gaming and wanted to make gaming content. And look, I'm always down to help a friend out. So, I say, "Yeah, sure, I can help you install it." And then he says, "Sweet, could you do it right now? Like, just go inside, grab my laptop from the living room, and bring it out here." I can't lie, I was a little annoyed. Like, I'm here for a bonfire, not a tech support session. But whatever, I say, fuck it, and go inside, grab his laptop off the table, and bring it outside. I hand the laptop to Joe and I'm like, yo, type in your password so I can get started. And this is where shit starts to get interesting. He gets this weird look on his face like he knows something's about to happen but can't stop it. He types in his password and the screen unlocks. And what do I see? A fucking website I've never seen before. And pulled up on this site is an adult video. But it's not just any porn video. No, this is something straight out of a fever dream. It's a video of a dude dressed up as SpongeBob SquarePants, getting it on. I mean, full SpongeBob costume, yellow square, all of it. And the girl, she's doing things to SpongeBob that I promise you no one ever asked to see. Now the minute I see this shit, I'm just in shock. And Joe knows he's fucked. He doesn't even try to slam the laptop shut or anything. He knows there's no getting out of this. He just looks at me, all embarrassed, and he goes, "Oh, my bad. I think my little brother was watching that." And I'm standing there like, "Your little brother? Really? That's your excuse?" I know for a fact his little brother has his own laptop, so there's no fucking way he was using Joe's. I just look at him and say, "Yeah, sure, Joe. No weird shit, huh? What would you call that then?" And of course, all our friends around the fire are curious as hell now. They're all like, "What is it? What did you see?" Joe's trying to play it off, saying, "Nah, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. I already closed it." But they weren't letting it go. They're like, "Nah, man, tell us. What was it?" Then they turn to me and they're like, "Austin, come on, what did you see?" I look at Joe and he's giving me this desperate look like, "Please don't say anything." So I ask him, "You want me to tell them?" And he's like, "It wasn't me, okay? It was my brother." He's stuttering, trying to explain it, and clearly no one's buying it. So finally he admits it. He says, "Okay, fine, it was a guy dressed up as SpongeBob, doing stuff." And they're all like, "What kind of stuff? What was he doing? Was he doing parkour or something?" At this point, they're just fucking with him, and I'm dying laughing. I mean, I've got tears streaming down my face because this is just so ridiculous. Joe ends up getting pissed, slams his laptop shut, and says, "You know what? Fuck this. We'll do it another day." And he storms inside, slams the door behind him, and doesn't come back out for the rest of the night. So there we are, having a bonfire at Joe's house, without Joe. We just kept going, talking shit about what had just happened, laughing our asses off. The next morning, I couldn't resist. I called him up, and the first thing I said was, "Yo, Joe, watching SpongeBob last night?" He just goes, "Ah, shut the fuck up, Austin." I mean, I had to give him shit for it. The guy literally called me the day before and told me he didn't watch any weird shit, and then he's watching SpongeBob porn. Come on, you can't make this up. It was awkward as hell hanging out with Joe the next few times after that. But eventually, things went back to normal. We all gave him shit for a while, but after a few weeks, we just kind of stopped bringing it up. I mean, at the end of the day, it was just an adult video. Yeah, it was fucking weird, but whatever. No one's perfect. We all have our weird moments, right? Unfortunately though, a few months later, me and Joe had a falling out. It wasn't because of SpongeBob or anything like that. It was for a whole different reason, and that's a story for another time. But yeah, after that, we just weren't friends anymore. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. It's definitely one of the crazier ones. If you liked it, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your own story times in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. So, today's story time is definitely an interesting one. I look back on this and think, wow, what if I had actually listened? And honestly, I'm so glad I didn't. I hope you guys enjoy this story time. If you do, leave a like on the video and let's jump into it. By the way, I'm live on Kick right now, so if you're watching this in the first couple of hours, come check that out. Link is in the description. Anyway, today's story takes place in 2015. This was one of the last years I had in school before I dropped out to pursue YouTube full time. Some of you might already know that, but for those of you who don't, yup, I dropped out. It wasn't exactly an easy decision, but looking back now, it was probably one of the best things I did for myself. So, let me set the scene. It was 2015, and honestly, I was having a pretty normal year. By normal, I mean I was failing most of my classes and not doing very well. Unfortunately, that was kind of my norm back then. It wasn't like I didn't try. I did, I really did. But for some reason, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't seem to pass my classes. It was like I was constantly fighting this uphill battle, and no matter how much effort I put in, I kept sliding back down. It was frustrating as hell. This story all starts off as a regular day. I went to school, I got there, went about my day as usual, and everything was pretty standard up until about halfway through. That's when things took a turn. I was sitting in math class, which by the way was one of my worst subjects. I was struggling to keep my eyes open, trying to pay attention to what the teacher was saying, when all of a sudden I hear my name over the loudspeaker. "Austin, can you please come to the principal's office?" I remember thinking, huh? What did I do now? because that day I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't gotten into trouble or anything. So I was honestly confused about why they were calling me in. But, you hear your name on the PA and you go. So I got up, walked out of the classroom, and headed over to the principal's office. As soon as I got there, I walked in and saw this big table with like half of my teachers sitting around it. Not my math teacher, she was still in class, but a bunch of other teachers. My English teacher was there, my history teacher, one of my tutors, and a few other teachers that I worked with from time to time. And sitting there at the table, right alongside them, was my mom. I remember my mom looking at me and saying, "Why don't you sit down?" So I sat down and immediately my brain went into overdrive. I was thinking, what the hell is happening right now? Why are all these people here? What's this meeting about? And then, as if to answer my question, my principal started speaking. The first thing she said was, "Austin, do you know how close you are to failing the year?" And just like that, it all clicked. This whole meeting was about my grades, my shitty grades. I looked back at her and said, "No, I don't know." And she replied, "You're really close to failing the year. If you fail one more quarter, you're done. You won't be moving on to the next grade." I tried to defend myself, saying, "Well, I'm trying my hardest." But before I could get much further, my history teacher chimed in. He said, "Austin, I know you're not trying your hardest. In my class, you have your head down all the time. You're falling asleep. I can tell you're not getting enough sleep at home." Then my English teacher added, "Yeah, we can tell you're not all there. I know you have that YouTube hobby that you do, and it seems like you're putting more time into that than your schoolwork. Every day you're on there doing stuff, but you're not doing your assignments. It feels like you're prioritizing things that don't matter as much." And just like that, it was out in the open. All of my teachers knew about my YouTube channel. The secret was out, and they all seemed to have a problem with how much I was uploading. They didn't like the daily uploads, guys. Like, literally right after my English teacher said that, all the other teachers chimed in. They were like, "Yeah, we don't understand why you're uploading so much on YouTube and not focusing on your schoolwork. What do you think is more important?" They just kept going in on me about it, one after another, and my mom was sitting there quietly the whole time. She knew how much YouTube meant to me, but she also knew that school was important. She was kind of caught in the middle, and I could tell she didn't really know what to say. Finally, they all went around the table, taking turns telling me how I needed to put more effort into school and less into YouTube. When it was my turn to talk, I said, "Listen, I understand that it may be hard for you to see why my YouTube channel is important to me, but it's not just a hobby, it also makes money. So if that's any reason to keep uploading, there's that." And look, I never uploaded videos for the money. I always did YouTube because I loved it. It was a hobby that just happened to turn into something bigger. But I figured that maybe if they knew I was making money, they might get off my back a bit. After I said that, my history teacher laughed and said, "Yeah? How much money? Is it really worth it?" And little did he know, at that point, I was making more money from YouTube than he was teaching. But I wasn't about to say that, because I didn't want to be rude. Instead, I just laughed to myself and looked down at the table without saying anything. He wasn't having it though. He said, "What's so funny?" And I looked up and said, "Nothing. You're just ignorant." And he fired back, "I'm ignorant? Well, I'm not the one failing the school year, am I?" And at that point, I was done. I looked at him and said, "You know what's funny? I'm probably going to fail this school year. I'm probably going to keep making YouTube videos like the nerd that I am, but somehow, at 16 years old, I'll still be making more money than you." He got so mad. I could see the insecurity on his face. He was like, "That's not even true, and you know it. You don't know anything about my life. You're just making assumptions." And I shot back, "Wow, isn't that funny and ironic coming from you right now? It's almost like you just did the same thing to me." He went silent after that. He had nothing to say. My principal quickly stepped in saying, "All right, stop it. This is ridiculous. This isn't the point of the meeting. All we're trying to say is that you should probably focus more on school and less on other things. I've talked to your mom about it, and we think it would be best if you took a break from YouTube for at least a year and got your grades back on track." And without missing a beat, I replied, "Absolutely not. That's never going to happen. I'll try to get my grades up, but I'm not stopping my videos. You can try to take it away from me, you can tell me to stop, but I'm never going to stop doing this." They kept trying to convince me, but they couldn't. I was dedicated, and I still am. In the almost 10 years I've been doing YouTube, people have told me to stop countless times. At least once a year, I'd have someone say, "Oh, it's probably not going to be feasible for more than a year or two. It probably won't last long." And yet, here I am, still standing 10 years later. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell those people. I'm not trying to hype myself up or anything, but the bottom line is, I ended up telling my teachers as nicely as I could that I wasn't going to listen to them, and they didn't like that. They kept trying, but eventually the meeting had to end because we ran out of time. Later that night, I was eating dinner at home, and my mom said, "Listen, I know this YouTube stuff is important to you, and you're doing well with it, so I'm not going to take that away from you, but I really think you should try to finish school." And I agreed with her. I told her I would try, and I did. I tried for a while, but honestly, I just couldn't do it. Whether it was my ADHD, my laziness, or just my inability to focus, I couldn't do it. And not long after that, I ended up dropping out. And honestly, I'm glad I did. Dropping out gave me way more time to focus on my channel, and it worked out really well. That was the year that changed my life. After that, I hit 1 million subscribers, and I became a full-time YouTuber and streamer. Things worked out better than I ever could have imagined. So, I guess the moral of the story is, don't give up on the things you believe in. I'm not saying you should drop out of school to pursue YouTube or some other dream, but you can do both. You can do well in school and still pursue your hobbies, whether it's YouTube, streaming, music, skateboarding, whatever. You can do both, and if people tell you that you can't, they're wrong. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't do both. I was either too dumb or too distracted or whatever, but I know a lot of you can. So, that's pretty much the end of the story. I'm really glad I didn't listen to them and didn't take that year off, because if I had quit YouTube for a year, I probably wouldn't be here today, talking to you guys. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. So today's video/story is definitely a pretty good one. Actually, it's a wild one, no doubt about it. If you guys enjoy it, leave a like, and let's just get right into it. Seriously, this one's ridiculous. We're talking about the time my teacher drunk messaged me on Facebook, and trust me, it went way beyond that. So let me take you on this ride. So, this story all starts off on what seemed like a regular day in 10th grade to be specific. Now, my 10th grade year was pretty interesting, to say the least. It was one of those years where a lot of wild, unexpected stuff just kept happening. Honestly, this story has got to be in the top 3 most ridiculous things that happened to me that year. Now, during my 10th grade year, I had a lot of teachers that I actually liked, which was a rare experience for me. Usually most of my teachers were kind of assholes, rude, uptight, and just generally not the kind of people you wanted to be around. But that year was different. A lot of my teachers were pretty chill, and I had this one teacher, Miss Norris. That's not her real name, obviously. I googled common teacher names, and Miss Norris was the first that came up. So, we're going with that. Miss Norris was, hands down, one of the nicest teachers I've ever had. She was the type who genuinely saw potential in everyone and wanted all her students to succeed. She was like a teacher and a friend at the same time, which was cool because not many of my teachers were like that. She had this way of making everyone feel comfortable, and she didn't just teach, she cared. So yeah, Miss Norris was one of the good ones. Miss Norris had a Facebook account, and unlike most of the other teachers at my school, she added all of her students. Most teachers would never add their students on Facebook. They would wait until you graduated or just wouldn't add you at all. But Miss Norris didn't care. She treated us like friends as much as she did students, and for some reason, having her added on Facebook was kind of the cool thing to do. Everybody in class had her added, so I did too. Now, I'll be honest, it wasn't bad having her as a friend on Facebook. She'd post some corny memes here and there, occasionally like a post or wish you happy birthday. The only thing she ever posted on my wall was a happy birthday during the year I had her class. Nothing weird, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, about 3 months after I added her, things got awkward. It was a Saturday night and I was just chilling, playing some MW2 on Xbox. I had Facebook open on my other monitor because I was messaging my friend Dylan. You know, just a regular Saturday night, trying to get that nuke in free-for-all. Out of nowhere, I got a Facebook message notification, not from Dylan, but from Miss Norris. I glanced over at my screen while I was mid-game and saw the message pop up. It said, "Hey sexy." At first I didn't even register it, I was too busy tearing shit up on MW2, but then it hit me and I did a double take. I was like, what the fuck did I just read? I read it again. "Hey sexy." I had to read it like 6 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Now, let me clarify, Miss Norris was an older lady, she was probably in her 60s. Not that it would have been any less weird if she were younger, it's still incredibly fucked up either way. But I know some of you guys in the comments would be asking if she was hot or how old she was, so there's your answer. After rereading this message 1,000,000 times and realizing it was real, I had to think, maybe she was just fucking with me, like pulling some kind of weird prank, or maybe she accidentally sent the message to the wrong person. I didn't know what else to do, so I just responded with a simple, because honestly, what else do you say to your teacher calling you sexy on Facebook? Almost immediately she responded back, "What are you up to?" with a winky face. I decided right then and there that I wasn't going to engage with whatever the hell this was, so I ignored it. I went back to playing MW2, trying my best to forget about it. I figured she had to be drunk and maybe just didn't realize she was messaging me. 5 minutes later, I got another message. This time, it was a picture message. I looked over at my screen and I saw the image loading. My internet back then was shit, so it took a while for the picture to actually show up. I was sitting there, basically having a panic attack while waiting for this picture to load, thinking, what the hell is this gonna be? My mind was racing. I was hoping it was something harmless, like her cat or some random meme, but I was also prepared for something I really did not want to see. Finally, the picture loaded, and thankfully, it was just a regular selfie of her smiling, captioned, "What are you doing? Come on, answer me." Even though it wasn't as bad as I thought it could have been, I still felt incredibly uncomfortable. So without a second thought, I went to her profile and blocked her. I had no idea what else to do. It felt like the only option. I was not going to keep dealing with this on my Saturday night. After that, I went back to playing Xbox, trying to pretend it didn't happen. The rest of the weekend, I just tried to forget about it. I told a few friends at school about it, and of course, they didn't believe me at first. I had to show them screenshots before they finally realized I wasn't lying, and then they were like, "Dude, your next class with her is gonna be so awkward." And I hadn't even thought about that until they mentioned it. I had to see her face to face on Monday. So, Monday rolled around, and for most of the day, everything was normal. But then I got to her class. I walked in, and she said, "Hello," smiling at me like she always did. Class went on like nothing had happened. She treated me just like any other day, like nothing weird had gone down that weekend. The more she talked, the more I started to think maybe she didn't remember. Either she was completely oblivious to what she did, or she was putting on the best poker face I've ever seen. But I couldn't take it. I couldn't just sit there and pretend everything was fine. That's not me. I can't ignore shit like that. So, before class ended, I walked up to her desk while everyone else was working on a quiz, and I asked if I could talk to her in the hallway. She agreed, and we stepped out into the hallway. I was like, "Hey, Miss Norris, I don't know if you're pretending that you didn't message me over the weekend, but you sent me some pretty inappropriate stuff. I feel like it might have been a mistake or something, but I just wanted to know what was up." She looked at me, completely confused, and said, "What are you talking about, Austin?" I said, "You don't remember?" She just shook her head. I was like, "You messaged me some things that I think were meant for your boyfriend or something." And she was like, "Are you joking right now?" So I pulled out my phone, unblocked her, and showed her the messages. Her face dropped. She looked like she was about to cry, like she was horrified. She took a deep breath and said, "I think I know what happened. I think I confused you with my boyfriend because you two have almost the same name." At first, I didn't believe her. It sounded ridiculous. But then she took me back into the classroom and showed me her Facebook friends list on her computer. Sure enough, there was another guy named Austin, and his last name was almost exactly like mine, only 2 letters were different. She showed me his profile, and they were in a relationship. They had pictures together, relationship status and everything. She wasn't lying. I just looked at her and I was like, "Okay, well, what about when I blocked you? Didn't you notice?" And she said, "Honestly, I didn't even know you blocked me. I can barely use Facebook, and I won't lie, I was drunk that night." Honestly, after seeing the guy's name and the fact that it was almost identical to mine, and knowing she was older and probably didn't know how to work Facebook properly, I kind of believed her. My parents are older, and they can barely use Facebook either, so it made sense. But I'll never know the 100% truth. Maybe she really was just old, drunk, and stupid, or maybe there was more to it. But at the time, I believed her. I went back to class, finished the day, and that was it. I didn't add her back on Facebook though, it was way too awkward. Eventually, I deleted my Facebook altogether. I figured, yeah, I'm good on this site. So, moral of the story, don't drunk message people on Facebook, especially not your students. And if you're a student, maybe don't add your teachers on Facebook in the first place. Lesson learned. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this insane, ridiculous story. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your own story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good everybody? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today's story time is definitely an interesting one. Probably one of the craziest encounters I've ever had with a parent. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, so if you do, make sure to leave a like on the video. Also, I'll be live on Twitch or Kick later on, whenever this video goes up, so check that out. First link in the description. But for now, let's get into today's story time. This story is about the strictest dad I've ever met in my entire life. Out of all the people I've dated, this girl I was with at the time, by far, had the strictest parents I've ever dealt with. So, yeah, let's dive in. It all took place when I was 16 years old. I was dating this girl, we'll call her Kelsey. We'd been together for about a month, and it was one of those relationships that was a bit of a secret. You know, nothing official, but we were into each other and were seeing where it would go. The thing was, it wasn't my idea to keep it under wraps. It was Kelsey's idea, and I didn't know why at first. I remember being a little offended initially, like, "What, are you embarrassed of me?" But after about 2 or 3 weeks of dating, she explained it to me. Her parents were crazy strict. If they found out she was dating someone, especially without their approval, they'd go ballistic. She said they'd ground her forever, take away everything she owned, and basically make her life a living hell. So I understood why we had to be low-key. Honestly, it was kind of stressful, but also kind of exciting in that teenage way. You know, sneaking around, keeping it secret. But like most things kept secret, it was only a matter of time before someone found out, and unfortunately for us, that's exactly what happened. This one day, about a month into our relationship, we planned a little date. We decided to go to a carnival that had come to town. It was one of those pop-up ones with all the rides and mini games and deep-fried food you could ever want. It sounded like a perfect spot to hang out. Kelsey told her parents she was going out with her girlfriends because if they knew she was meeting me, they'd have flipped out. My parents, on the other hand, were way more chill, so I just told them I was going out with Kelsey. No drama there. So, we meet at the carnival. It was one of those beautiful early summer evenings, the kind that just makes you feel like everything is right in the world. We spent the first hour or two just having a good time, riding rides, playing games, eating funnel cake, the whole carnival experience. We even won a stuffed animal at one of the rigged games. Everything felt perfect. But as the night wore on, it started to get late and Kelsey had to be home. The sun had gone down and the carnival was lit up by all these neon lights, which honestly made it look even more magical. She looked at her phone and I could see her face tense up. She told me she was supposed to be home soon. I knew she was worried about walking home by herself. It was late and sometimes sketchy people hung around after these kinds of events. I offered to walk her home, at least to her street, so I could see her get to her house safely. She was hesitant, worried her parents might see me, but I told her I wouldn't go all the way to her door. I'd just make sure she got down her street okay. Eventually she agreed and we started the walk back to her place. We were just talking about how much fun we had at the carnival, joking around and enjoying each other's company. It felt like one of those perfect nights you remember forever. We finally made it to her street and I stopped at the corner, letting her walk the rest of the way by herself. I stayed there, just watching to make sure she got in safe. She walked up her driveway, turned around to give me a quick smile, and then disappeared inside. I felt a sense of relief like, alright, mission accomplished, she made it home safe. I turned around and started walking back towards the main road, ready to head home myself. But I had barely taken 2 steps when I heard this deep voice from behind me shout, "Hey you! Stop!" I turned around and I see this guy, maybe in his 40s or 50s, barreling down the street towards me, full sprint. He was a big dude, muscular, broad shoulders, and just generally scary looking. I didn't recognize him at first, and my initial thought was that he must be running at someone else. But as he got closer, I realized there was no one else around. He was running straight for me. My heart was pounding and I had 2 choices. I could either stand there like an idiot and hope he wasn't about to attack me, or I could run. It took me about half a second to decide that I wasn't about to get my ass beat by some random dude, so I turned around and booked it. As I was running, I yelled over my shoulder, "What do you want? I don't have any money." I thought maybe he was trying to rob me or something, but he yelled back, "I don't want your fucking money. What are you doing messing around with my daughter?" That's when it hit me. This was Kelsey's dad. My heart sank. I knew I was in serious trouble. I kept running and I yelled back, No, I'm not doing anything. We were just hanging out." But he wasn't having it. He shouted, "Stop running. Get over here now." Obviously, I wasn't about to stop and just let him catch me. He was gaining on me though, so I just kept running as fast as I could, weaving between parked cars, trying to put as much distance between us as possible. He was right on my tail though, and we were literally yelling back and forth while sprinting. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. After what felt like forever, I saw the carnival up ahead. I decided to run back there because there were people around, and I figured if I could get close to the security booth or where the cops were parked, I'd be safe. I sprinted back through the carnival entrance, ran up to the ticket booth, and stopped right in front of the security officers. There were also 2 police officers parked by the entrance, so I felt a little bit safer. I was panting, out of breath, and just praying that Kelsey's dad wouldn't try to do anything in front of all these people. Sure enough, he came barreling up behind me, stopping just short of where I was standing. He got right in my face, yelling at me. He was furious. I could barely understand him, but he was calling me every name in the book. He even called me a twerp. I hadn't heard anyone use that word in years. He was so mad and I thought for sure he was going to hit me. But before anything could happen, one of the cops walked over and asked, "What's going on here?" Kelsey's dad pointed at me and said, "This little twerp has been sneaking around with my daughter behind our backs." The cop looked at both of us and then back at the dad and said, "Sir, this is a public event. You're causing a scene. I need you to calm down." And surprisingly, he did. He took a step back and took a deep breath. The cop gave him a warning and then walked away, but he kept an eye on us from his car. After that, Kelsey's dad started talking to me in a calmer tone, but it was no less intimidating. "All right, listen," he said, pointing a finger in my face. "You're done talking to my daughter. Don't call her again. Don't text her. Don't even look at her in school. Whatever you two had going on, it's over. Understand?" I tried to explain, "Sir, you don't understand. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just hanging out." But he cut me off. "No, you lied to us, and that's wrong enough." I tried to tell him that my parents knew about us dating, and it wasn't my fault she hadn't told her parents. He just scoffed and said, "We don't want her dating people like you." I remember looking at him, genuinely confused, and asking, "What do you mean, people like me?" He laughed, looked me up and down, and said, "Look at yourself. Look at how you're dressed." I looked down. I was wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers. Pretty standard clothes for a teenager, I thought. I accidentally let my sarcasm slip and said, "What's wrong with what I'm wearing? Didn't you wear jeans and t-shirts back in the day, like in the 50s or 60s or whenever you were born?" He turned beet red. "How old do you fucking think I am?" He snapped. I knew I should have just kept my mouth shut, but I couldn't help it. "I'm just saying, man, what I'm wearing doesn't make me a bad kid." He ignored me, turned around, and started walking away. But before he left, he said one last thing: "Stay away from my daughter. I'm done." As soon as he walked out of my line of sight, I pulled out my phone. I had a message from Kelsey. "Austin, I'm so sorry. My dad found out you walked me home. I was 10 minutes late and he ran out to yell at my friends for dropping me off late, but then he saw you. I hope he didn't hurt you. Please let me know what happened." I immediately called her, not wanting to risk texting her while her dad was around. She answered on the first ring and I could tell she was freaking out. "Austin, are you okay? Did he do anything to you?" I told her what had happened, that her dad chased me all the way back to the carnival, but the police were there so he didn't actually hurt me. She kept apologizing, saying, "It's my fault, I should have told you about my curfew." I tried to reassure her, telling her it wasn't her fault, that everything was fine now. She sounded relieved but then said, "I think it's a really good thing the police were there. He literally ran out of the house yelling that he was going to kill you." That made my stomach drop. I mean, I knew he was mad, but I didn't realize it was that serious. I told her I couldn't talk long because he was on his way back home, and we hung up. After that, I walked home, just trying to process everything that had happened. For the next couple of weeks, we couldn't talk at all. Kelsey's dad had taken her phone, her computer, everything. We could only talk at school, and even then, it had to be super quick, in between classes. Eventually, after about 2 weeks, she managed to get her phone back, but I had to change my number just so we could talk. She put my number in her phone under some random girl's name, like Sarah or something, because her dad was checking her messages every day. Whenever we texted, we had to pretend like we were two girls gossiping. I remember once, we had this whole conversation about One Direction, just in case her dad saw the messages. We had to play it so safe. But in the end, it wasn't enough. We ended up breaking up because it was just too much. Her dad wouldn't let her leave the house without knowing exactly where she was going and who she was with. He checked in constantly, and it was just impossible to hang out without risking getting caught again. It sucked, but I knew it wasn't her fault. We both knew it was never going to work with her dad breathing down her neck like that. So, yeah, it was kind of an unhappy ending, but at the same time, I'm just glad I didn't get my face punched in by her dad. Dude was unnecessarily muscular for his age, like built like Rocky or something. It was ridiculous. Anyway, moral of the story is, maybe don't be like 16-year-old Austin, sneaking around. It's not worth getting chased by a dad who looks like he could take on Mike Tyson. But yeah, that's it for today's story time. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your own story times in the comments below, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today's story time is definitely a wild one, a crazy one for sure. Before I jump into it, I just gotta say, disclaimer, don't go repeating anything I talk about in these story times. They're for entertainment purposes only. But today's story, man, it's wild and I hope you enjoy it. If you do, leave a like on the video and let's jump right into it. So, today's story takes place when I was in 10th grade. Back then, I was definitely a bit of a fuck up. I got myself into a lot of trouble, usually of my own doing, but this particular situation wasn't entirely my fault for once. It all starts on what seemed like a regular day. I woke up in the morning, jumped out of bed, took a shower, got ready for school. I had to skip breakfast because I was running late, so I rushed out and headed for the bus. Now, I don't know if it was just one of those days or if it was because I skipped breakfast, but as soon as I stepped off the bus and into the school building, I got hit with the worst migraine ever. I'm not the type of person who gets migraines a lot. Every now and then I'll get one, but they're pretty rare. So, getting one that quickly and that intensely was super weird. My first thought was that it had to be because I hadn't eaten. So, I went upstairs to the cafeteria to grab something, and I ended up eating there for about 5 minutes. Honestly, I'm not much of a breakfast person. I skip it most days, which is a shitty habit, and I definitely don't recommend it. But anyway, I grabbed something to eat, hoping it would make the migraine go away. After that, I went downstairs to my first period class, and for some reason, the migraine just kept getting worse. I put my head down at one point because I felt so nauseous. I honestly thought I was going to throw up. While I was sitting there with my head down, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked up, and it was this dude who sat in front of me. I didn't really know this guy well. The only thing I knew about him was his name, Brian, and the fact that Brian liked to party. I saw him at almost every party I went to in high school, and he was always the most fucked up one there. That's all I knew about him. Brian looked at me and said, "Yo, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good, just got a headache." He asked, "Yeah, migraine?" I said, "Yeah, man, I don't know why, I never get these." And then he said, "You want something for it?" I replied, "You got something? I need a Tylenol or an Advil or something." Brian reached into his backpack and pulled out this little white bottle with no label on it. The label had been ripped off. He opened it up and poured a pill into my hand. I looked at it and asked, "What are these?" Because let's be real, it was sketchy as fuck. No label, the pill didn't look familiar. I had no idea what it was. Brian just said, "Oh, it's Tylenol." I looked at it and said, "Really? It doesn't look like Tylenol." He said, "Yeah, it's off-brand shit. I get migraines too, so I keep this on me all the time." So I took it. I figured, Brian had no reason to lie to me. Why would he drug me? He had no reason to do that. That was my first mistake, trusting someone like that without thinking it through. Let me just say, never take medicine from some random person, especially if you have no idea what it is. It was so stupid of me to do that. And, as you can probably guess, things did not go well from there. I took the pill and didn't think much of it. The rest of first period was fine. The headache started to fade a little, and I thought everything was cool. Then I got to my second period class, and that's when shit started to get really weird. As soon as I sat down, I started feeling different. Like really different. I felt tired and sluggish, and my whole body felt warm. Almost too warm. It felt like my muscles were turning into pudding. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like my muscles were slowly melting into jello, and I was just super relaxed. I felt like if I closed my eyes, I could have slept for 8 hours right there in class. At first, I thought it was just the migraine. Sometimes when I get migraines, I get really nauseous and tired, so I just figured it was the migraine doing its thing. But then I realized the migraine was fading away, and I was still feeling incredibly tired, like more and more tired by the minute. And honestly, at that point, I completely forgot that I had taken that pill. It didn't even cross my mind that it could be what was making me feel like that. I tried to go about my day as normally as possible, but halfway through the period, things got even worse. I started feeling nauseous again. I could barely move, and when I tried to stand up to sharpen my pencil, I could barely walk. It was terrifying. When I sat back down, my friend Ethan, who sat next to me, noticed something was up. He looked at me and said, "Yo, are you okay?" And I just mumbled, "Yeah." He said, "Are you sure? You look sick." I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." But even as I was saying it, I started slurring my words, and that's when I realized, oh shit, something's really wrong. No migraine makes you slur your words like that. That usually means something much more serious is going on. I started to freak out, but I was so tired I could barely react. Ethan kept trying to talk to me. He asked, "Do you need to go to the nurse?" And I was like, No, I'm fine." He said, "Are you sure? What's going on?" I replied, "I don't know. I had a migraine earlier." And then it hit me. I remembered the pill. I said, "Oh, I took something for it." He looked at me. "You took something for it? What did you take?" I said, "Just some off-brand Tylenol." He asked, "Off-brand Tylenol? From where? The nurse?" I shook my head. "No, I got it from Brian." Immediately, Ethan's eyes went wide. "Brian? Brian gave you something?" I said, "Yeah." He looked at me and said, "Dude, Brian's a pill popper. You know that, right? He probably gave you something that's not what you think it is." I tried to defend Brian. Nah, he wouldn't do that. It'd be a waste of money for him. Ethan shook his head and said, "Dude, I've seen him do worse." Now I was really freaking out, but at the same time, I was basically just a puddle in my chair, unable to move. And of course, while I was talking to Ethan, my teacher noticed and called me out. "Austin, do you have something you'd like to share with the class?" I said, "No." She asked, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, can I go to the nurse?" She sighed, "Okay, go ahead." So, I got up, grabbed my backpack, and slowly made my way out of the classroom. I felt like I was walking through quicksand. I went upstairs to the nurse's office, told her I wasn't feeling well, and lay down on one of the beds. I ended up staying in the nurse's office for the rest of the day. I was there from third period all the way until the final bell rang. I was just sleeping, waking up every time the bell rang, and the nurse would come over and ask if I was feeling better. I kept telling her, no, I just need to sleep. When the last bell rang, the nurse woke me up and said, hey, it's time to go home. I was so out of it, I didn't even realize the day was over. I still felt nauseous and groggy, but at least I could move now. I could stand up, I wasn't slurring my words anymore, and things felt a little bit clearer. The nurse asked, did you not sleep last night or something? And I just said, honestly, I don't know. She gave me a weird look. You don't know? I said, I slept, but I don't think I should be this tired. She said, alright, well, just go home and get some more rest. If it gets worse, go see a doctor. I nodded and left, got on the bus, and went home. The rest of the day was pretty normal, nothing else happened. The next morning is when the story really comes to a close. I woke up, took a shower, ate some breakfast, and was feeling way better. No migraine, no weird grogginess, just back to normal. I got to school early, and when I got to my first period class, I saw Brian sit down in front of me. I tapped him on the shoulder and said, yo, Brian. He turned around, smiling like he knew what was coming. I said, be honest with me, did you give me some shit yesterday that wasn't Tylenol? He looked at me, still smiling. Why do you say that? He even started giggling a little. I wasn't having it. Bro, nothing's fucking funny. Did you give me something? Like a painkiller? A muscle relaxer? What was it? Because I felt that shit, and it was not Tylenol. What did you give me? He started laughing harder and finally said, okay, it may or may not have been one of my mom's muscle relaxers. To this day, I don't think I've ever been that angry in my entire fucking life. I'm usually not the type to get violent, but I remember feeling so much rage. I didn't even think about it. I just wound back and punched him square in the face, right there in the middle of class while the teacher was talking. It was so loud the entire class turned to look. Brian's head snapped back and he grabbed his face, yelling, dude, what the fuck? The teacher looked shocked and just said, Austin, get out of here right now. Go to the main office. So I grabbed my stuff and went to the main office. I sat down and the principal called me in. He said, Austin, do you want to explain what you just did? I said, yeah, I punched Brian in the face. The principal asked, why? And I just said, no reason. I didn't want to snitch, even though I probably should have. The principal knew I wasn't telling the truth. Everyone at my school knew I wasn't a violent person. I'd never hit anyone without a reason, and my principal knew that. He kept pushing me, saying, Austin, tell the truth. I know you didn't just do this for no reason. But I didn't say anything, so I got suspended for 2 weeks. Honestly, I deserved it. What I did wasn't right. I shouldn't have hit Brian, even though what he did was unbelievably fucked up. He lied to me about what he was giving me, and that's dangerous as hell. But still, violence isn't the answer, and I got what I deserved. Needless to say, Brian and I didn't talk after that. Luckily, I didn't hurt him too badly, just a cut on his lip. No broken teeth or anything. But I think he learned a valuable lesson about not giving people random pills, and I learned a valuable lesson about not taking shit when I don't know what it is. So, yeah, moral of the story, don't do anything I talked about in this story. Just don't. If you're not feeling well, go to the nurse, get proper help. And if someone offers you a random pill, just say no. Anyway, that's the story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good everybody? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today, I've got a wild story for you from my early teenage years, back when I was 16. This one is funny, chaotic, and honestly just a bit crazy. So if you enjoy these kinds of stories, leave a like on the video. I always appreciate it. Let's get into it. Alright, so today's story takes place back when I was 16 years old, during summer vacation. It was one of those carefree summers where every day was full of doing something fun. I mean, whether it was just playing COD with the homies, skateboarding, or hanging out somewhere random, it was always a good time. Now, I wasn't exactly the most well-behaved kid at that age, you know? Your boy was definitely up to some stuff I probably shouldn't have been doing, staying out late, sneaking out of my house, and sometimes lying to my parents about where I was. I'm not saying this like it was cool, in fact, I advise against all of it. But that's just how it was at the time, and I was definitely going through a bit of a rebellious phase. I was smoking a lot. Cigarettes, weed, you name it. I wasn't proud of it, and looking back now, I wish I had been smarter. Anyway, one day that summer, I woke up super late. It must have been around 1:30 p.m. I remember thinking I needed to do something to get out of the house. I texted my friends, seeing who was down to hang out, and within 30 minutes, 3 of my friends hit me back. They wanted to link up, and specifically, they wanted to smoke. That was basically the plan: meet up, hang out, and smoke at some point. We decided to meet at my friend's house, and once we were all there, we got ready to head out to a nearby park where we could smoke. One of my friends had some weed and he was cool with sharing, so we got everything ready, packed the bowl and all that, and then made our way to this park that was about a half-mile down the road. This park was kind of a well-known spot. It was always pretty crowded. Lots of families would bring their kids there. Honestly, it wasn't the best place for what we were planning, but it was close and we figured we'd be careful. Now, when we got there, I immediately had a bad feeling. I saw at least 10 or 12 parents with their kids at the playground area, which was only a few hundred feet away from where we were at the baseball field. We were far enough away that they probably couldn't tell what we were doing, but still, I felt paranoid. And I mean, who wouldn't be? We were just a bunch of kids with a bowl, sitting there in the middle of an open field. It wasn't exactly low-key. But anyway, we sat in a circle and started smoking, passing the bowl around. With every hit I took, my paranoia got worse. I kept glancing over my shoulder at the playground, making sure none of the parents were looking our way. Despite all my anxiety, everything seemed to go fine. We managed to get through 2 bowls and we packed everything away in my friend's backpack. We were just chilling in the field afterward, talking and laughing for about 20, maybe 25 minutes. And that's when things started getting interesting. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed 2 cars pulling into the parking lot near the park. And right away, I knew. These were cop cars. They weren't marked, but you know when you just know? They were those police SUVs that look kind of low-key until you notice the sirens on top. I said to my friends, "Yo, I think those are cops. We should probably get moving." But apparently, all of my friends were either half blind or just didn't care because they all looked over, shrugged, and said, "Nah, those aren't cops. You're tripping." They thought I was just being paranoid, but I kept my eyes on those cars. I watched as the doors opened, and sure enough, 2 cops got out. They started walking in our direction, straight toward the baseball field. I turned to my friends again and said, "Guys, those are definitely cops. They're walking over here right now." My friends finally looked again, and this time, they could see I wasn't just making stuff up. Immediately, they started to freak out. My friend who had the weed jumped up and said, "Yo, we gotta run." And just like that, they all got up and took off, sprinting across the field, with the cops now running after them. Now, I was still sitting there, completely caught off guard. I had to make a quick decision. Do I get up and try to run too, or do I just stay put? The cops were already pretty close, and I knew I wasn't the fastest runner. I figured I'd probably just get caught anyway if I tried to bolt. Plus, I didn't have anything on me. The weed was in my friend's bag, so I decided to stay put. One of the cops stayed with me, while the other one took off after my friends. The cop who stayed with me walked over, and he was like, "Why didn't you run like your friends?" I looked up at him and said, "Honestly, sir, I just didn't feel like running." He laughed a little, shook his head, and said, "You know, your friends made a dumb decision running like that. We're not out here to arrest a bunch of kids for smoking a little weed. We were just going to tell you to leave the park." I was honestly surprised by how chill he was being. He was definitely a little annoyed, but he wasn't trying to scare me or anything. He asked me how old I was, and when I told him I was 16, he said, "Yeah, at your age, I was doing the same kind of stuff, but running from the cops over it? That's just stupid." A couple of minutes later, his partner came back. He was out of breath and looked like he'd just run a marathon. It was pretty obvious my friends had managed to outrun him. He looked at me and said, "Those bastards are quick." I couldn't help but laugh a little, and the cop even cracked a smile. He asked me if I knew where my friends were headed, and I just shook my head and said, "No idea." After that, the cop told me to get up and follow them back to their car. I was nervous. I thought for sure I was about to get cuffed and taken in, but instead, they just opened the back door and told me to sit down. I asked, "Am I being arrested?" And the cop said, "What? No, we're just giving you a ride home." I didn't really want a ride from them, but I figured it was better than walking, so I said okay. The whole ride home, the cop driving was giving me this lecture about making better choices. He said, "You know, I wouldn't usually give someone a ride home after catching them smoking weed in a park, but since you were the only one who didn't run, I'll make an exception." I just nodded and said, "Thank you, I appreciate it." He told me not to come back to that park to smoke, especially since there were families and kids there. I agreed. At one point I got curious, so I asked, "How did you know we were smoking?" He said, "How do you think? Someone from the playground called it in. They probably saw you or smelled it." I was kinda shocked. We were pretty far from the playground, but I guess we weren't as slick as we thought. The cop went on, "We're not gonna go looking for your friends, but if you see them, tell them not to run next time. Running from the police is a whole different level of trouble." When we got to my house, they let me out and just drove off. They didn't tell my mom or anything, which I was thankful for since she wasn't even home at the time. I went inside, called up my friends, and told them what had happened. They didn't believe me at first, but after I explained it like 3 times, they finally got it. A couple of hours later, I ended up meeting back up with those same friends at my buddy's house. We just hung out there for the rest of the day. None of us were trying to go back out and risk getting into more trouble. Honestly, those two cops were probably some of the chillest cops I've ever dealt with. Not because they were super nice or anything, but because they realized they had bigger things to worry about than some teenagers smoking weed in a park. They were just annoyed that my friends had run from them. It was definitely one of the funniest and craziest times I've ever been caught doing something stupid. And looking back now, it's one of my favorite stories to tell because of how it all went down. So yeah, that's the story of how I ended up getting a ride home from the cops after my friends ditched me at the park. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys later. Peace. Yo, what's good everyone? It's Austin here, or Luna, and today's story is definitely one of the most ridiculous things that has ever happened to me. Easily in the top 3 of the most awkward and uncomfortable situations I've ever been in. But hey, now that it's all in the past, it's actually pretty funny to look back on. I hope none of you ever have to go through something like this, but if you do, maybe you'll think of this story and know you're not alone. If you like this story, please leave a like. It means a lot, and let's jump right into it. This all took place during my freshman year of high school, probably in the first month or two. It was still that awkward beginning phase where I was trying to learn my schedule, remember people's names, and just get used to being in high school. One of the classes I had almost every morning was history, and honestly, I wasn't a big fan of it, not because I didn't like history, but because the teacher would just drown us in homework. Like every single day, we'd get multiple assignments, or projects, or some other kind of work to do. It was easily triple what I had in my other classes, and it was driving me nuts. So, on this particular Tuesday, I was sitting in history class, same as always, in the back of the room because we didn't have assigned seats. For most of the class, it was a pretty normal day, just the teacher lecturing, us taking notes, the usual stuff. But then, right at the end of class, my teacher dropped a bomb on us. He announced that we were going to start a group project and that it would take 2 weeks to complete. Not only that, but we'd have to work on it both in class and at home. So, that meant 2 straight weeks of history work, and that immediately put me in a bad mood. But wait, it gets better. We didn't get to pick our partners. Instead, the teacher was going around the room, assigning people to groups of 3. I was hoping I'd get paired with a friend or someone I knew, but when he got to me, there was only one other person left. So instead of being in a group of 3, we got stuck as a group of 2. The teacher said he'd give us some extra credit to make up for it. But still, it sucked because we were already at a disadvantage compared to the other groups. And then there was the other part. My partner was Jeremy, the quietest kid in class. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being shy. I'm pretty shy myself when I'm around new people, but Jeremy was next level. He barely said a word. Ever. After the teacher assigned us as partners, I walked up to him, trying to be friendly and said, "Hey man, I'm Austin. Nice to meet you." He hesitated for a second, then said, "Jeremy." I was like, "Cool, nice to meet you, Jeremy." And that was that. I sat down next to him since there was an open spot at his table, and we listened to the teacher explain that we'd start the project the next day in class and then take it home to work on it. The next day, I got to history class and we started working on the project. And, to no one's surprise, Jeremy barely contributed. I was basically doing all the work. I tried asking him questions to get him involved, but he'd just nod or shrug. It felt like I was doing the whole thing by myself, which was super frustrating. After class ended, we were walking out, and I decided to ask if he wanted to meet up after school and try to get it done early. I said, "Hey dude, I'd really like to get this over with as soon as possible. Are you down to meet up after school the next couple of days so we can knock it out early?" He nodded, but didn't say anything, so I asked if he wanted to do it at my place or his. He shrugged again. I told him that my house wasn't really an option because we had people over that day, and he nodded, so that meant we'd be meeting at his place. I gave him my number and told him to text me his address. He pulled out his phone, put my number in, and sent me his address. After that, I went through the rest of my school day, not really looking forward to meeting up with Jeremy after school because, honestly, he was so quiet that it felt like I was just going to be working alone. But I figured it had to be done, so whatever. After school ended, I decided to head straight to Jeremy's place since his house was closer to the school. I texted him to let him know, and he said it was cool. I got there in about 20 minutes, and the first thing I noticed was that Jeremy was way more talkative at his house. It was like he was a completely different person. I think being at home just made him feel more comfortable because as soon as I got there, he started asking me about the project and what he could do to help. He was actually contributing a lot more than he had been in class, which was a pleasant surprise. We ended up working on the project for about 2 hours and we got a lot done, way more than I expected. After that, we both decided to call it a day. I hit up one of my brothers who could drive and asked if he could come pick me up. He said he'd be there in about half an hour, so I had some time to kill. Jeremy and I just sat in his living room, chilling, getting to know each other a little more. We started talking about random stuff, like what shows we watched. He asked if I liked anime, and I told him I hadn't watched much, but I had seen some and liked what I'd watched. He got really excited and started asking me which ones I'd seen, so I listed off a few. He knew most of them and liked some of them too, so I thought, okay, cool, we've got something to talk about. But then, out of nowhere, he drops this bomb. He starts telling me about this anime he's watching and how the main character has giant anime titties. I tried so hard not to laugh. I was just like, oh, cool man, cool. But he just kept going. He was like, yeah, dude, she's so hot. I didn't know what to say. I mean, what do you say to that? I'm not about to sit there and agree with him. Like, I'm not into 2D women, and I don't care if he is, but I'm not gonna lie about it. So I just kept saying, cool, cool. I was hoping he'd drop it, but he didn't. He kept talking about how hot this anime character was, and I'm just sitting there, nodding, trying to be polite. Finally, he moved on to another topic, and I thought we were in the clear. But then, a few minutes later, he brought up anime again, and I'm thinking, here we go. He looks at me and goes, who are your top 3 hottest anime girls? I was like, I don't really have a list like that, man. He goes, come on, just make one real quick. I told him I wasn't into it, and he finally dropped it. After that, the rest of our conversation was normal, thankfully. My brother eventually showed up, picked me up, and I went home. The next day, I went over to Jeremy's again after school to keep working on the project. We worked for another couple of hours, and then I hit my brother up to come get me again. While we were waiting, Jeremy and I were sitting in his living room, just chilling. And just when I thought things were going well, Jeremy hits me with another weird question. He goes, are you cool with locker room talk? Now, if you don't know what locker room talk is, it's basically just talking about personal stuff, usually inappropriate stuff. I was like, yeah, sure, man. I figured he was gonna ask about a girl at school or something, but nope. He looks at me and asks, what's your favorite adult film category? I was not expecting that. And look, if someone I knew a little better had asked me that, I probably wouldn't care, but I didn't know Jeremy like that, so it was just weird. But I answered honestly, and in case you're wondering, at the time it was MILF. It's changed since then, but hey, it's still a solid category. Anyway, after I told him, he goes, can you guess what mine is? I knew exactly what it was without even having to think about it. I was like, I'm gonna guess it's the one with anime girls. He smiled and said, bingo. Then he asked if I liked hentai. I told him no, but he kept pushing it. He was like, come on, you've definitely tried watching it at least once, right? I was feeling super uncomfortable, but I admitted that, yeah, I'd seen it once or twice, but it wasn't my thing. Then this dude starts telling me that I'm probably just not watching the right subgenres, and he pulls out his phone to text me a link. I was like, it's cool, man, you don't have to do that. But he sent it anyway. I was just thinking, this kid is insane. Finally, my brother showed up, and I got out of there. On the way home, I told my brother everything, and he was like, dude, you need a new partner. This kid sounds creepy. I was like, yeah, he kinda is. He told me that bringing it up once was one thing, but bringing it up again after I made it clear I wasn't interested was weird. I was glad I wasn't the only one who thought so. The next day, I decided I needed to ask my teacher for a new partner. I got to history class early, went up to the teacher and was like, hey, I really want a new partner. The teacher looked confused and asked why. I told him that Jeremy and I just weren't getting along, and he asked if we were arguing. I said no, but that the conversations were making me uncomfortable. He asked what I meant, and I had to explain what Jeremy had been saying. I felt bad for snitching, but it was the only way to get out of this situation. The teacher's face when I told him about Jeremy's hentai obsession was priceless. He looked horrified. After hearing me out, he agreed to move me to a different group. He told me I could work with one of my friends, which was awesome because my friend's group was almost done with the project. The teacher said he'd move Jeremy into another group, and that would be the end of it. After class that day, the teacher told both me and Jeremy that we'd be getting moved into different groups. Jeremy looked confused and asked why, and the teacher stuttered for a moment, clearly caught off guard. Jeremy looked at me like he knew it had something to do with me. The teacher made up some lie about wanting us to be in bigger groups to make things easier. Jeremy didn't seem to believe it. After class, as I was walking out, Jeremy came up behind me, put his hand on my shoulder, and spun me around. He asked, did you request a different partner? I decided to be honest and said, yeah, I did. He asked why, and I said, I think we both know why. He got super defensive and started calling me a coward, saying I couldn't handle a little locker room talk. At that point, some people were starting to gather around thinking we were about to fight. I really didn't want to deal with it, so I turned and started walking away. But then Jeremy yelled, walk away, you coward! I tried to ignore it, but just as I turned the corner, I felt something hit me in the back of the head. It hurt, and I felt liquid running down my neck and back. I turned around and saw a Gatorade bottle on the ground. Jeremy had thrown it at me, 90% full, with the cap off. At that point, I was done. I walked back up to him and I slapped him across the face. I didn't punch him because I didn't want to escalate it to that level, but I wanted to show him that I wasn't gonna let him throw stuff at me. He didn't retaliate, but instead just stared at me. I turned and started to leave again, but as I walked away, I heard something hit the ground behind me. I turned around and it was his notebook. He had thrown it at me too. I had enough. I yelled out, "Hey everyone, the reason I got a new partner is because Jeremy kept talking about hentai non-stop." Some people in the crowd started laughing and Jeremy's face turned red. I felt kind of bad for airing him out, but at the same time, he kept pushing me. I wish that was the end of it, but Jeremy ran up to me and started swinging. He hit me in the shoulder, and I immediately went for a takedown. Guess I've been watching too much MMA. I managed to take him down and we ended up on the ground, grappling. We threw a few punches before security came and broke us up. We both got dragged to the principal's office and our moms were called in. When the principal asked what happened, I had to explain the whole thing, how Jeremy wouldn't stop talking about hentai and how it escalated from there. The principal's face looked just as horrified as my history teachers had. My mom and Jeremy's mom were both there and they made the same face. I felt bad for Jeremy's mom because she seemed really disappointed. In the end, we both got suspended, 2 days out of school and 3 days in school suspension. My mom was pretty understanding about the situation, all things considered, and I didn't get in too much trouble at home. After a few months, things between Jeremy and me eventually cooled down. We weren't friends or anything, but we could pass each other in the halls without any drama. So yeah, that's the story of how I ended up in one of the most awkward and ridiculous situations of my life. The moral of the story is, if your partner starts making you uncomfortable, it's better to speak up sooner rather than later, and definitely don't throw Gatorade bottles at people. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, and if you've got any crazy stories of your own, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Peace. Hey, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna, whatever you prefer. So, today's story time is a pretty ridiculous one, but before we get into that, just a quick heads up. My new merch dropped today. Honestly, this is probably my favorite drop yet. I know, I say that every time, but seriously, it just keeps getting better. I'll put some of it up on the screen. We've got a new shirt and hoodie that I think you'll love. And as a little bonus, I'm calling the first 100 people who buy each item. So, the first 100 who get the shirt and the first 100 who get the hoodie, you're getting a phone call from me. That's 200 calls total. Also, if you grab anything from the store, doesn't matter what it is, make sure you screenshot your confirmation page and tweet it at me or tag me on Instagram so I can like it. I'm also going to be following back and DMing as many people as I can, so I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys. But if you're not into it, that's totally cool too. No pressure at all, just putting it out there for those who are interested. Alright, enough plugging, let's get into this crazy story time. So, this one happened when I was 18 years old. I was single at the time, not really talking to anyone, just living my life, making videos, and hanging out with friends. Simple stuff. One day, I get a friend request on Facebook. Back then, I still used Facebook to keep in touch with family and old friends. I don't really use it much anymore, but at the time, it was still a thing. Anyway, I get this friend request from this girl who went to my school. I recognize her, so I'm like, alright, cool. And I add her. Not even 10 minutes later, she sends me a message. Hey, oh my god, I remember you from school. You were so cute. I miss you. We should hang out. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, that's a little weird. Because let me tell you, I never hung out with this girl, not once. In high school, she never even noticed me. We had mutual friends, so we'd exchanged maybe 5 words total over the years, but that was it. We were not friends, not even close. So I found it kind of strange that she was saying she missed me, but I figured whatever, she's just being nice, right? So I reply and say, thanks, how have you been? And she's like, great, we should get to know each other more. I didn't get to know you in high school, but we should change that. I'm like, alright, sure, here's my number. I mean, she seemed nice enough, and I thought it might be cool to get to know her as a friend. So I give her my number, and she texts me. I add her to my contacts, reply, hey, what's up? And then she just leaves me on read, doesn't respond for the rest of the day. Later that night, she finally texts back, hey, can you add me on Snapchat? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I add her on Snap, and she immediately sends me a message. I swipe on it, and I'm not even kidding, it just says, send dick. And I'm just sitting there like, huh? Like what the hell? This was literally one of the first things she said to me since adding me. So I reply, what? And she's like, please? I respond, no. And she's like, why not? With a sad face emoji. I'm like, because I don't know you like that. She replies, oh, so you'll have to get to know me. And I'm like, no, I'm just saying I don't know you like that. sorry, but no. She goes, oh, okay, so what's up? And at this point, I'm thinking, alright, this got way too awkward, way too fast. I decide I'm not gonna reply for the rest of the night. I just leave her message unopened and jump on Xbox instead. Figured I'd deal with it when she's sober, assuming she's just drunk and being ridiculous. The next morning, I wake up to a text from an old friend from school. I hadn't talked to him in about a year, but he was really good friends with this girl. His message says, yo man, call me when you see this. And I'm like, well, that's strange. So, I call him to see what's up. He picks up and he's like, yo, what's up, bro? I'm like, not much, why'd you want me to call? He's like, first off, how you been? I tell him I've been good and we catch up for a bit. Then he says, listen, I just wanted to let you know, even though we don't talk much, you're my boy and I gotta look out for you. That girl that added you the other day, do not trust her. I'm like, wait, her? And he's like, yeah, her. Dude, she was at my house the other day for a party and she said she's gonna try to get with you because of your status. And get this, she said if it didn't work out, she was gonna sell your nudes to YouTube drama channels for money. I'm just sitting there in disbelief like, you've got to be kidding me. He's like, no dude, I'm serious. She was a little drunk, but it seemed pretty honest to me. I'm like, bro, I'm not even famous. Why would she say that? He's like, listen man, you're from a small town, you're doing well for yourself, and people see that and want to take advantage. Just be careful. I'm like, holy shit, thank you so much man, you just saved me. He's like, no problem bro. After I heard her say that, I couldn't even look at her the same way. Just be safe, alright? I'm like, for sure man, you're a real one. He asks if she messaged me recently, and I tell him about the snap she sent asking for a dick pic. He's like, oh no, tell me you didn't send anything. I'm like, hell no, dude. He's like, Vanga, thank God, man. Alright, take care. Let's hang soon. And we hang up. Immediately, I open her snap from the night before. It's just a random, hey, I'm just hanging out at home type message. So I reply, hey, what's up? And she's like, hey, sorry about last night. I was a little drunk. I'm like, no problem. Just a question though. Are you trying to date me for clout or like sell my nudes to YouTube drama channels? Because first off, no one's buying my nudes, and second, I'm not famous. So good luck with that. She replies, oh my god, no, I was just joking. I said that at a party to be funny. I'm like, I don't know. One of your really good friends told me you seemed pretty serious. She's like, who? I'm like, I'm not ratting him out, just saying you didn't seem like you were joking. And then she snaps, drops the whole nice act and goes, you know what? Fuck it. He was telling the truth, I was gonna sell those pics and I was gonna manipulate you and I was gonna enjoy every second of it. At this point, I'm thinking, holy shit, this girl is a psychopath. Like, who says something like that? So I reply, you're a psychopath. She's like, you would have deserved it. And then she blocks me. And I'm just sitting there imagining what would have happened if I actually fell for that. Like, can you imagine some random OnlyFans or leaked pics on some YouTube drama channel? Who even wants that? No one's trying to see my shit. Anyway, moral of the story, some people are just straight up evil. She was one of them. Be careful who you trust because some people will try to manipulate you for their own gain. I still can't believe she actually admitted all that. It's insane. But yeah, that's the story. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and feel free to share your own stories in the comments. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening and I'll catch you all later. Peace. Yo, what's up everybody? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today's story is one where, honestly, I'm not looking too great either, but it's a wild ride and I think some of you will appreciate it. So let's get into it. Leave a like if you enjoy the story, I'd really appreciate that. Alright, let's jump into it. Today's story takes place back when I was 16 years old. It was a weekend, specifically a Saturday, so I woke up late around noon or maybe even 1 PM. You know how it is. I got up, took my sweet time getting started with the day. I showered, grabbed some food, and was pretty much gearing up for a day of doing absolutely nothing, just playing Xbox, watching TV, and chilling. As I'm getting through my very late breakfast, my phone starts ringing. I look down and it's my buddy Joey calling, so I pick up and I'm like, yo, what's up? Joey's like, dude, what are you up to? I'm bored as hell. I told him the truth, like, honestly just woke up, eating, don't really feel like doing much today, just chilling. And Joey wasn't having that. He's like, nah, come on man, don't be lame, it's Saturday, you've got all of Sunday to do nothing, get up, let's hang out. I'll call some of the guys and we'll make it a good time, don't be a lazy bum. And honestly, I kept being a lazy bum. I just wasn't in the mood for socializing. I was like, nah dude, I really don't think I'm down today. But Joey wasn't letting up. He pauses for a second and then comes out with, alright, real talk, I want to hang out, but I also need your help with something. I'm like, okay, what do you need? And this dude, without missing a beat, goes, do you know how to get on the deep web? Immediately, I'm like, whoa, wait, what? Why? And Joey goes, I'm just thinking about getting some weed or something, and I heard you could get it on there. You think you could help me? Now, here's the thing. I hadn't really been on the deep web in a long time, and I knew enough to know it's not exactly a safe place to mess around. I tell him straight up, dude, it's been a while, and honestly, I don't know where to look anymore. I know how to access it, but that's about it. And Joey's like, alright, that's fine. Just help me get set up. You know the browser we need, right? That's all I'm asking. Come on, man. I need a favor. You know I don't ask for much. I thought about it, and he kind of had a point. He didn't usually ask for stuff like this, so I was like, alright, fine, I'll come over, but I'm not staying long, just an hour or so. He was stoked. Bet, I'll see you in a couple hours. So we made plans for me to swing by his place. A little later, I hop on my bike and head over to Joey's house. He lives pretty close by, so it's like a 20-minute ride. I get there, and he's got a couple of our other friends over too. We're chilling in his basement, and after about 10 minutes, Joey goes upstairs, grabs his laptop, and brings it down. He opens it up, hands it to me, and he's like, alright, let's do this. So, I go ahead and install the browser, the one you need to access the deep web. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, but I'm not about to do a tutorial or anything like that. Anyways, I set him up, and Joey's thanking me, and then he's back to his original plan. He's like, alright, so you got any recommendations? Where should I go to buy stuff? And I'm just like, dude, no, I told you, I don't remember any of that. You're on your own there. He takes it in stride though. He's just happy to be set up. After a while, he starts browsing around on some sketchy-ass website. It's selling all kinds of substances. Weed, pills, you name it. Joey is browsing like it's a damn shopping spree, and I'm just sitting there thinking, this is a bad idea. I tell him, bro, this site doesn't look legit at all. It's definitely different from what I remember. I wouldn't trust it. Joey, though, he wasn't listening. He's like, nah, look, it's got reviews and stuff. I think it's fine. I tried to warn him, but ultimately, it's his choice, right? So Joey ends up buying some weed. It wasn't anything crazy, maybe like $60 or $70 worth. But still, it's sketchy as hell. He paid with Bitcoin, which at the time was probably worth way more now if he'd kept it. But whatever, he was buying weed with it, and that's that. After Joey places his order, he's all hyped. He closes the laptop, looks over at me and says, mission accomplished. I asked him, what are you gonna do when it gets here? Your parents open your mail all the time, dude. You know they're gonna be all over this. Joey's confident though. He's like, nah, it's cool. I'll just camp out by the mailbox. I'll know when it's coming and I'll just grab it before they do. Easy. His plan didn't sound foolproof, but again, it's his life, so I leave it at that. Fast forward to about 5 days later, it's Thursday. At this point, I'm skipping school a lot. I hadn't officially dropped out, but I wasn't showing up much, if at all. On that Thursday, I decided to skip again. My mom was at work, my brothers were out, so I had the house to myself. I was just chilling, streaming on Twitch, probably playing Skate 3 or something, when I get a call from Joey. I mute my mic, pause the stream, and answer. I'm like, yo, what's good? He's like, not much, just hanging at home. I'm like, wait, what? Aren't you supposed to be in school? He goes, yeah, I skipped. I wanted to be here when the package arrives, just in case it gets here early. I laugh and tell him, you're nuts, man. I doubt it's coming that early. He's like, I know, but I wanted to be sure. Then he asks, yo, you want to come over after your stream and we can smoke when it gets here? I tell him, aren't your parents going to be home soon? I don't want to be there when they find out you skipped. Joey's like, nah, they're working late. I blocked the school's number on the home phone so they won't know I skipped. This dude was devious, I'll give him that. So, I agree to head over after my stream. I tell the chat, alright guys, I'm out. I'll catch you later, and end the stream. I grab my stuff and ride over to Joey's house. I get there and sure enough, no one's home but Joey. We hang out for a bit and about an hour after I arrive, the mail comes. His parents still aren't home, which Joey's thrilled about. He's like, dude, perfect timing. They're not even here yet. I got the package, no issues. He grabs it and we go upstairs to his room to open it. We're in Joey's room and he starts opening the package. Inside there's a stereo system, like an old school boombox, which is weird enough on its own. But Joey realizes there's a panel on the boombox that comes off and inside is the weed. It's stashed in there. But then I see something else. I'm like, wait, hold on, what's that? Joey pulls out this tiny double-bagged package with white powder in it. Now, we hadn't ordered that. Joey's looking at me, freaked out, and he's like, dude, I swear I didn't order this. I believe him. He's not into hard drugs like that. He's panicking, asking me what to do. I'm like, Man, get rid of it. Take it out back, dump it in a puddle, whatever. Just get it out of here. He's about to go do that when we hear a car door slam outside. We look out the window and we see Joey's parents coming up the driveway with dinner, subs from some sandwich shop. Joey's freaking out. I'm like, dude, hide that shit. Put it back in the boombox or something. He quickly pops the panel back off, throws everything in there and sets the boombox on his dresser. Then we sit on the bed, pretending we're just watching TV. A minute later, we hear footsteps coming up the stairs. Joey's parents walk in and they're surprised to see me there. His dad's like, "Oh, Austin, I didn't know you were here." I'm like, "Yeah, just hanging out." His mom asks, "How was school, boys?" We both lie, "Yeah, it was good, nothing special." Then his dad notices the boombox. He's like, "Hey, where'd that come from? Did you bring that over, Austin?" I'm like, no, that's Joey's." Joey's trying to back me up, saying he's had it for a while, but his dad's not buying it. He walks over, picks it up, and starts inspecting it. Then he says, "Why does it smell like skunk in here? Joey, do you have weed in here?" Joey's trying to deny it, but his dad's not having it. He pulls out this little screwdriver and pops off the panel. And there it is, the weed and the bag of white powder. He looks at Joey and goes, "Joey, what the fuck is this?" Joey's mom starts crying and she's like, "What is that, Joey? Are you doing hard drugs?" His dad turns to me and goes, "Austin, is this yours? Did you bring this over here?" I'm like, "No, sir. I swear it's not mine." He's not convinced. He's like, "I'll call your mom right now." Joey steps in and finally confesses. He tells his dad everything, how he bought the weed on the deep web, how the other stuff was a mistake and it wasn't supposed to be there. His dad's not buying it though. He's pissed. He's like, "Don't lie to me, Joey. I can tell when you're lying." His mom's still crying, asking what the deep web even is. It's a total mess. I just wanted out of there. I was like, I'm gonna head out. Joey's dad stops me. He's like, "No, you're not. We're calling your mom." So he calls her, tells her everything and asks her to come pick me up. 10 minutes later, my mom shows up. She's not happy. We're driving home and she's like, "Austin, can we just go one day without you getting into some kind of trouble? Just one day?" I'm trying to explain like, "Mom, I swear it wasn't me. I didn't buy anything." She believes me, but she's still mad. She's like, "You need to pick better friends. You keep getting into trouble because of the people you hang out with." I felt bad, not just because I got caught up in Joey's mess, but also because I genuinely worried for him. His parents were strict, and I knew he was going to get it bad. After that day, I didn't hear from Joey for a while, almost a month. I tried texting, calling, even messaging him on Xbox, nothing. I was getting worried. Eventually, I got a message from him on Facebook. He told me he'd been grounded for weeks. They moved him to a different school, took away all his electronics. Life was rough for him. It took even longer for him to be able to hang out again. And when he finally could, it was under strict conditions. No alone time at anyone's house, parents had to be home. They had him on a tight leash. I felt bad because I knew he didn't deserve it, especially not for that extra bag that wasn't even his doing. If it had just been weed, maybe he would have gotten off lighter. But that extra shit, that's what really did him in. So yeah, moral of the story? Stay the hell off the deep web. Nothing good comes from it. It's sketchy and it's dangerous. If you're thinking about going on there, don't. Learn from Joey's mistake. But yeah, that's the story, guys. Definitely a crazy one. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and feel free to drop your story times in the comments. I'd love to read them. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all later. Peace. So most of the time when I tell a story on this channel about school or a teacher or something that happened to me in school, it's usually from my high school days or maybe middle school. But this story takes us way back to elementary school and it stretches beyond that too. So I hope you enjoy it. It's a wild one. If you do enjoy it, leave a like on the video and let's get into it. Today's story starts back in the 4th grade. Yeah, 4th grade. From what I remember, it was a pretty chill year. I mean, it's elementary school, right? You're just a kid having fun, even in school. At least that's how I remember it. I had fun. Maybe I should have paid more attention, but whatever. Elementary school was fun, and 4th grade was especially cool because I had this amazing teacher. Let's call her Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith was just awesome. She was the kind of teacher that everyone wanted when they got to 4th grade. In my school, back in the day, we had one teacher all day, unlike middle and high school, where you switch classes. So Mrs. Smith was the only teacher I had that year, and let me tell you, she was the best. I had no complaints at all. She was also younger than most of the teachers at my school, so she could relate to the kids more, She got us. But there was one thing about Mrs. Smith that I noticed as a kid, and I didn't really understand it until much later. Every morning when she came into school, she used to smell a little funny. Not in a bad way, like she hadn't showered or anything. It was more like a skunky kind of smell. And as a 4th grader, I didn't really get it. I remember asking my mom one time, "Mom, why does my teacher smell like a skunk?" My mom just looked at me all awkward and said, I don't know, honey. She definitely knew, but I didn't. Anyway, one morning in fourth grade, I got to school and Mrs. Smith wasn't there. We had a substitute, which was weird. I thought maybe she was sick, like she just had the flu or something. The whole class was kind of bummed out because she was our favorite teacher. We all figured she'd be back in a couple of days though, but then 4 days passed and she still wasn't back. A week passed and she was still gone. Another week went by and she was still not there. After about 3 weeks, our parents finally told us that Mrs. Smith wasn't coming back. We were all confused. Why would she just leave? I mean, she was a great teacher, so why would she quit or get fired? It made no sense. I remember asking my mom, "Why isn't Mrs. Smith coming back?" And my mom said, "Oh, the school and her had a disagreement, so she decided to work somewhere else." I was a curious kid, so I pressed her, "What kind of disagreement?" She just said, "Professional stuff. It was about teaching." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I should have questioned it more, but I didn't. The rest of fourth grade sucked after that. Our substitute teacher was mean as hell and nothing like Mrs. Simsier. Mrs. Smith, honestly, the rest of that year was just bad because of her. I hope none of you ever have to deal with a teacher like that substitute. She was the worst. So fast forward past fourth grade, past fifth grade, and now I'm in sixth grade. I was in middle school, a completely different school, and one of my friends from my old elementary school was there too. He was the only person I recognized from elementary, so he was my first friend in middle school. On the first day of sixth grade, I went up to him at his locker and said, "Yo, what's up, man? Long time no see." He was like, "Oh, what's up, dude? You're here too?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Man, I'm not gonna miss that old school. Too much drama." I asked, "Drama? What do you mean?" He replied, "You know, like with the teachers, like that one teacher who got busted for drugs." I was like, wait, slow down. Who got busted for drugs?" He looked at me and said, "Mrs. Smith." I was like, "What? My parents didn't tell me anything. What happened?" He was like, "Come here." He opened up his iPod Touch and Googled our school district and Mrs. Smith's name. He pulled up this old news article about her. It said that Mrs. Smith's house got raided by the police, like the DEA or something. They found dozens of marijuana plants in her house. She was growing a ton of weed in her basement. That explained everything, the smell, all of it. I looked at my friend and said, "Why was she growing all that weed?" He said, "Keep reading." So I kept reading, and from what I could gather with my sixth grade brain, it seemed like she was growing the weed not just to smoke it, but also to sell it. I mean, if you're growing that much, you're probably dealing too. And back then, weed was very illegal in New York. If you got caught with a bunch of plants, you were in serious trouble. After I read the article, I handed my friend his iPod back and he asked, "Dude, your parents never told you about this? What did they say?" I told him, "My mom just said there was a work disagreement and she left to work somewhere else. I had no idea it was because of this." He said, "Yeah, it was a big deal." After that, I was really curious. I wanted to know what happened to Mrs. Smith, if she went to jail, if she was still around, what her deal was. So I went home after school, jumped on our family computer, and started Googling her name, looking her up on Facebook, trying to figure out what happened. But I couldn't find much, just that same article about her arrest and the raid. Nothing about how long she went to jail or anything else. Fast forward a few years to ninth grade. I was at the store with my mom, standing in line to check out. I turned around to grab a soda from the fridge at the front of the checkout line, and there she was, Mrs. Smith. She was standing there with her cart full of groceries. We both recognized each other immediately, and you could tell we were both a little hesitant. But I finally said, "Hey, Mrs. Smith," and she replied, "Austin, I thought that was you." My mom turned around and said, "Oh, Mrs. Smith, how are you?" We awkwardly caught up for a bit, and my mom asked her, "What are you up to these days?" Mrs. Smith said, "Oh, I'm working at this company," and basically explained that she was a receptionist for a big business downtown. Honestly, that was pretty impressive, getting out of an arrest and a big drug bust and landing a better paying job than teaching. Good for her. Honestly, yeah. We were chatting for a little while longer, and then my mom said, "All right, we've got to go," because she'd already paid for our groceries, and me, being a dumb ninth grader with zero social awareness, blurted out, "Mrs. Smith, before I go, did you go to jail for a long time?" You could tell that question caught her completely off guard. She looked at me for a second and said, "Oh, not for very long, just a few months." I said, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, have a good one, Mrs. Smith." She said, "You too, Austin," and I turned and followed my mom out. As we walked out, my mom looked at me and said, "Did you just ask her how long she went to jail for?" I said, "Yeah." She was like, "You know about that?" I said, "Yeah, and you knew since fourth grade and didn't tell me." She said, "Yeah, because you were in fourth grade." I replied, "Well, I'm in ninth grade now. You could have told me a couple of years ago." She shook her head and said, "You don't ask people stuff like that. It's rude." I was like, "Alright, sorry." She just sighed, "Yeah, you should be." And that was the last time I ever saw Mrs. Smith. As far as I know, she's still living in my hometown, probably working that same job. Hopefully she's doing well. Weed is legal now in our town, so who knows? Maybe she's working at a dispensary or something. Either way, I hope she's doing alright. The moral of the story? If you live somewhere where weed is illegal, maybe don't grow a bunch of plants and try to sell it. You can get into a lot of trouble. Mrs. Smith was lucky to only go to jail for a few months. Back then, people in my town got caught with just a couple of plants and ended up in jail for way longer. But yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video, it helps me out a lot. Feel free to share your story times in the comments below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna, back with another story. Today's story is definitely one of those that's funny to look back on, but in the moment, not so much. I mean, at the time I was definitely not laughing, but now it's just hilarious to me. I hope it will be entertaining for you all too. So, leave a like on the video if you enjoy it and let's get into it. This story takes place when I was 14 years old, right in the middle of my skateboarding phase. Actually, scratch that. This was my peak skateboarding phase. I'm talking about being out there every single day, trying to land tricks, trying to look cool, just spending hours skating with my friends. After school, I'd go straight to the park and we'd skate from like 3 volts in the afternoon until 9 volts at night, every day, rinse and repeat. On weekends, it was even longer. I'd get up at noon and head out to skate until it was basically pitch dark. My mom was cool with it, which was a blessing. She was usually pretty strict about curfews, but when it came to skating, she seemed to have this extra level of trust. Maybe she thought that if I was skating, at least I wasn't getting into any worse trouble, which, to be fair, was mostly true. So, it's a Saturday, right? I wake up and do the usual, jump out of bed, take a shower, grab a granola bar, because you know, I had to eat something, and then head to the skate park near my house. This particular skate park was where everybody from my school hung out, even the people who didn't skate. It was like a social spot for everyone in my school. You'd find skaters, kids just chilling on benches, even kids that were too scared to try skating but still wanted to be part of the vibe. So I show up to the park and the place is packed. A bunch of my friends are there already just chilling. As usual, whenever I saw a big crowd, I felt this pressure to show off. You know what I'm talking about. I was like, look how good I am guys, I can do a kickflip, I can do a shove it. Just being a classic 14-year-old show-off, trying to impress literally anyone who'd watch. And that day, it was no different. I was feeling good, I was ready to land some tricks, and my friends were all around watching. So I decided to try this trick, nothing too crazy. I wanted to ollie off this bench, land smoothly on my wheels, and roll off. Just ollie off the bench. It wasn't a huge trick or anything, but it was big enough to be impressive. I'd landed it a few times before, but it wasn't super consistent for me yet. So I start trying it. The first few times, I totally mess it up. I'm talking board slipping out, me landing on my feet awkwardly, sometimes just straight up missing the timing. I kept getting scared and bailing out of it, kicking the board out from under me before I could even fully commit. But after about 10 tries, I finally land it clean. Perfect ollie, roll away, everything. And only my buddy Ryan saw it. He was another skater in our group and he was like, "Dude, that was sick." And when he said that, everyone else, who had been busy chatting, looked over. Some girl in our group, who wasn't even skating, just hanging out, was like, "Oh, do it again, I want to see." And I was thinking, alright, time to show off, let's go. I wanted to impress everyone. So, I go back up to the bench. I get into position, give myself a little push, and go for the ollie again. This time I got even more height, like I flew up there feeling like Tony Hawk or some shit. I soar off the bench and everything's looking good until the landing. I hit the concrete and immediately I knew I'd messed up. My feet were too far forward. The board slipped out from under me at an angle and I was sent flying backwards. I tried to catch myself with my hands, but I was going too fast and I just couldn't stop it. My head hit the concrete hard. It made that awful dull thud sound, the kind of sound that you just know isn't good. My hands had slowed me down a little, but my head still smacked into the ground. And man, as soon as my head hit, everything just started spinning, like literally spinning. The bright blue sky I'd been looking at was now a mess of motion, like I was on some kind of crazy amusement park ride. My ears started ringing too, like that muffled underwater feeling. Everything felt distant and I was beyond dizzy. I remember sitting there for a moment just trying to piece together what had happened, feeling like I was on another planet. From here things get fuzzy for me, so everything I'm about to tell you is what my friends told me later. My buddy Tyler, who was probably the first one to run over, said that he rushed to me, checked my pupils, and was just trying to make sure my head wasn't cracked open. Meanwhile, everyone else gathered around like, "Yo, Austin, you good?" But apparently I wasn't really responding. I was just looking kinda dazed, like I wasn't fully there. They helped me up, but when I stood up, I couldn't even balance myself. I kept stumbling and almost falling over. At that point, they knew something was really wrong, so they called 911. None of us had cars back then, so calling an ambulance was the only choice. They also called my mom, and she rushed over to meet the ambulance at the park. They put me on a stretcher, and the next thing I knew, I was in the back of an ambulance heading to the hospital. I don't remember the ride at all. Again, all of this is from my friends and my mom's perspective because I was completely out of it. My mom said they ran a bunch of tests at the hospital, including a brain scan to make sure I didn't have any severe head trauma. Luckily, I didn't have a brain bleed or anything like that, but I did have a pretty bad concussion. Like, it was gnarly. Not the good kind of gnarly though. For the next month, it sucked. I had all the classic concussion symptoms. I'd randomly get confused, like I'd be sitting there and completely forget what I was doing. I was super sensitive to light, even just looking at my phone screen hurt my eyes, and my hearing was all messed up. Everything sounded muffled and I couldn't focus. It felt like I was stuck in this weird dream state and I just wanted it to end. And, as if having a concussion wasn't bad enough, I was also in a relationship at the time. And I say in a relationship loosely because we were 14, so you can imagine how serious it actually was. But during my concussion recovery, I completely forgot my girlfriend's birthday. Straight up didn't even remember it was her birthday. She ended up breaking up with me over it. And honestly, to this day, I'm not sure if it was just me being a typical clueless 14-year-old or if it was because of the concussion. But I like to blame it on the concussion because, well, it's the only excuse I've got. So yeah, not only did I get a concussion, but I also lost my girlfriend because of it. Honestly though, looking back, it's kind of hilarious. I mean, how unlucky can you get? One day, you're just trying to impress your friends at the skate park, and next thing you know, you're single and concussed. It's funny now, but at the time, it was rough. But I did learn a valuable lesson that day, and I'm gonna share it with all of you. It's simple. Wear a helmet. Seriously. I know helmets aren't the coolest looking accessory when you're trying to skate and look all badass, but trust me, it's way better than smashing your head on the concrete. I got so lucky that I didn't end up with anything worse than a concussion. It could have been so much worse. After that incident, I wore a helmet every single time I went skating, and there were a few times after that where I hit my head, but the helmet saved me. So yeah, after that I couldn't skate for a couple of months. I had to take it easy, which sucked because I loved skating. But eventually, I got back on the board and everything was fine. I still skated with my friends and I never stopped loving it. The concussion was just a wake-up call to be a little more careful. All in all, it was a wild experience, but I'm glad I'm able to look back at it now and laugh. And I'm glad I can share this story with you guys, so hopefully, you don't make the same mistakes I did. Wear a helmet, don't try to show off too much, and just be safe out there. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below, and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here. Or Luna. Today's story time is a ridiculous one. Honestly, there's no better way to describe it. So, grab some popcorn, kick back, and let me tell you all about that one time I got my ass beat by a girl. Yep, it happened. I know, it's one of those things you'd think only happens in movies or as an old school playground insult, but this actually happened, and it's a hell of a story. Leave a like on the video if you enjoy it, and let's get into it. This story takes place when I was 21 years old, literally a week after my 21st birthday. So you already know what that means. I had just gotten through partying for a week straight, celebrating being legally allowed to drink, and I thought I was living my best life. Things were going pretty well. I had made some new friends around my city, I was hanging out with them a lot, and I was just generally having a good time. So, a week after my 21st birthday, I got invited to go out to a club with a few friends of mine. I was like, hell yeah, why not? So I went out with 4 of my friends. We get to this club and we start having a good time, just vibing. We ended up meeting a few people at the club, specifically 3 girls and a couple of guys who were friends with the girls. They weren't dating or anything, just friends. We all hit it off, getting along really well, so we made the spontaneous decision to leave the loud club and continue the party at my buddy Jacob's house. Now, let me just say, Jacob had a nice house. His parents were on a month-long trip to Italy or something, so we pretty much had the whole place to ourselves. Indoor hot tub, home movie theater, you name it, this dude had it. So, we all head over there, including these 3 girls, their friends, and even more people we invited over who didn't like the club scene. Altogether, there were probably about 15 of us, so it wasn't a massive party, but it was a solid gathering, you know? Enough people to make it fun. We started off by chilling in the hot tub. I was just getting to know one of these girls. Nothing serious, not trying to hook up or anything, just chatting. And then, out of nowhere, my friend Jacob comes over with a shot in his hand. He goes, "Here, take this." And I'm like, Yo, what is it? It smelled like tequila, and let me be real with you guys, I don't drink much. If you've watched my channel for a while, you probably know that. Drinking's just not my thing. But there I was, freshly 21, in a hot tub with people chanting my name and my friends pressuring me, "Come on, Austin, take the shot." So I said, "Screw it." I took the shot. And honestly, it went down like fire, but I did it. And then Jacob, being the wonderful friend that he is, comes back with another shot. This time, he has two. One for me, one for him. He's like, "I didn't get to take it with you the first time." And at that point, I was feeling it, but I still said, "Alright, man, fine, bottoms up." Now, call me a lightweight if you want, I don't care, but 2 shots of tequila already had me feeling some type of way. And when I start feeling good, I tend to keep the vibe going, which led to me saying, "You know what, screw it, hand me a White Claw." And from there, well, things went downhill quickly because I don't remember anything else from that night. I remember getting the White Claw, but after that, completely blank. Fast forward to the next morning. I wake up in Jacob's guest room, and the first thing I feel is the pounding headache, like my head was splitting open. I looked like a complete mess, and I definitely felt like one too. My stomach wasn't doing me any favors either. I was throwing up, feeling like death itself, and I'm sitting there trying to remember anything from the night before. All I can recall is being in the hot tub with my friends and those random girls, and then nothing. So, I get up and make my way downstairs to find Jacob. I find Jacob sitting in the kitchen, and I walk up to him and ask, "Yo, what happened last night? I can't remember a thing." He looks at me with this expression that immediately makes me nervous. He's like, "Dude, I don't think you want to know." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I notice he keeps glancing at the left side of my face. I'm like, "Bro, what's wrong?" And he goes, "Have you looked in the mirror yet?" I said no, so he grabs my arm and leads me to the bathroom. He flips the light on, and oh my god, the sight that greeted me was terrifying. I had a full-on black eye. The entire left side of my face was bruised and swollen, and my lip was busted. I'm standing there in complete shock, and I turn to Jacob and ask, "What the hell did I do last night?" He goes, "Bro, a girl did that to you." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, you got your ass beat by a girl." At this point, I'm just baffled, so I'm like, "Alright, back up, start from the beginning, tell me everything." He's like, "Alright, so after we got out of the hot tub, you had a couple of White Claws and you were feeling it. You started dancing around on the table and yelling. You were being obnoxious, and we tried to put you to bed twice, but each time you got back up and kept coming back downstairs, acting crazy." I'm sitting there listening and I'm already embarrassed, but then he continues. "So at one point, this girl got mad because she thought you were disrespecting her friend. You put your arm around him and whispered something in his ear, and he made this weird face, so she thought you were bothering him. She tried to get you off of him, but you weren't moving, so she just started swinging on you. And bro, you just stood there and took it. You didn't even fight back. We jumped in and stopped her, but she got a few good hits in, obviously." I'm just standing there stunned. I'm like, what did I even say to her friend that made her freak out like that? Jacob's like, "Dude, I don't think you want to know." I insisted, "No, I want to know. What did I say?" And he goes, "After we got you upstairs and away from her, we asked the guy what you whispered to him, and I swear to God, he said you whispered, 'My name's Jeff.'" I just stared at Jacob, trying to process what he was saying. I was like, "Are you messing with me right now?" He's like, "No, dude, you said, 'My name's Jeff,' like from 21 Jump Street, and I guess the guy made a funny face, and the girl thought you were bothering him, so she started swinging." At this point, I thought they had to be trolling me. I'm like, "Do you have their numbers? I need to call them and hear this for myself." He's like, "Yeah, we got everyone's Instagrams," so he sends me their profiles. I follow the guy and the girl, and they both follow me back pretty quickly. I DM them and ask for their numbers, and then I FaceTime the girl first. She answers, and the moment she sees my face, she immediately starts apologizing. She's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, you look terrible." I'm like, "Yeah, I feel pretty terrible too." She's like, "I'm so sorry, I was so drunk, and I thought you were bothering my friend. I would have never done that if I wasn't so drunk." I'm like, "It's all good, I'm not mad. I just wanted to confirm, did I really whisper 'My name's Jeff' in his ear?" She goes, "Honestly, I don't know what you whispered. I just thought you were bothering him, and I was drunk and angry." We both kind of laughed it off, and I told her it was all good. Water under the bridge. Then I FaceTimed the guy, the one I apparently whispered to. He answers, and he's also like, "Damn, man, you look rough. I'm really sorry she did that. I tried to stop her." I'm like, "It's fine, dude. I just need to know. Did I actually say, 'My name's Jeff'?" He's like, "Honestly, I don't really know what you said. It kind of sounded like that, so that's what I told him, but I don't know for sure." So, there you have it. I got punched in the face over some mystery sentence that may or may not have been, "My name's Jeff." To this day, I don't know what I actually said, but apparently, it sounded enough like "My name's Jeff" to get me beat up. The funny thing is, I actually stayed in touch with that guy, and we're still friends to this day. It's always funny to tell people how we met because I get to say, yeah, I whispered my name's Jeff in his ear, and then his friend beat me up. Definitely one of the more interesting ways to meet someone. Anyway, moral of the story, don't drink too much. Seriously, it's not worth it. I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your own story times in the comments below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here. Or Luna. So, I don't tell a ton of stories from when I was a little kid. Most of the stories on this channel are from when I was like, I don't know, between the ages of 14 to 21. That's kind of the sweet spot where most of my stories take place. But a lot of stuff happened back when I was younger, and I don't talk about it that much because I just tend to forget about those times. But this morning, I remembered this one story, and as I was thinking about it, I realized I haven't shared it yet. And honestly, it's definitely one of the craziest ones from when I was younger, so I hope you enjoy it. Leave a like on the video if you do, and let's jump into it. Now, when I was a kid, let's say I was around 11 or 12 years old, I was a fairly well-behaved kid, I mean, I was a kid, so I was definitely annoying at times, but for the most part, I was pretty good. I remember specifically that my mom would always tell me how quiet I was compared to other kids my age. I guess I wasn't much of a troublemaker. I don't really know why that was. Maybe something was wrong with me, who knows. But, according to my mom and my brothers, I didn't whine a lot or cry a lot, at least compared to some of the other kids I knew. Now, I can't say the same for some of my friends. Around the ages of 11 to 12, I hung out with like 4 key people. We were all very similar for the most part, but there was one kid in particular that I hung out with who was, let's just say, a little different. Let's call him Brian. Now, Brian was a bit of a diva for a 12-year-old. I mean, listen, I get it. We were all young, we were still kids, and you kind of have the right to be a little whiny at that age. But Brian took it to a different level, like a different level of whining that wasn't quite normal. Another thing about Brian was that he was very well off. His parents were rich. Every time I went over to his house, I was shocked at how they lived compared to my family. Not even in a jealous way, just in a holy crap, this is what life is like when you're well off kind of way. And don't get me wrong, I didn't grow up on the streets or anything like that, but we didn't have the kind of money that Brian's family had. So whenever I got the chance to go over to Brian's house, it was like I was living a different life for a little while. It was cool, I got to experience a lifestyle that I wasn't used to. One day when I was 12, Brian invited me over to stay the weekend at his house, and of course I said yes, I was all in for that. So I went over to his place for the weekend. The first day, Friday, was pretty normal. We were just playing video games, hanging out, kicking back, just chilling, nothing out of the ordinary. But the next day, Saturday night, is when things got crazy. His parents were out for a date night, so it was just me and Brian hanging out in the living room, playing Halo. We were doing what we always did, just shooting the breeze, having fun. And out of nowhere, we hear this sound. The sound of a car skidding into the driveway. It wasn't like someone was peeling out, it was like they were peeling in. It sounded like someone pulled in really fast, and I remember looking over at Brian like, yo, what the hell was that? He looked just as confused as I was. We were both like, that's kind of weird. A couple of moments later, the front door swings open and it's both of his parents. Now, they shouldn't have been back yet. They had left for dinner maybe 30 minutes prior, so there was no reason they should have been back so early. And his mom comes in with tears streaming down her face. She looked absolutely devastated, like she'd just received the worst news of her life. Brian's dad didn't look much better either. He looked really upset. So they come storming into the living room, and his mom looks directly at Brian and yells, "What the fuck did you do?" Immediately, Brian's face goes pale. He starts tearing up, and he looks completely confused. He stammers, "What? What are you talking about?" His mom's still crying and she shouts, $20,000 fucking dollars were charged to my credit card. What did you buy? When she said that, I think my heart stopped for a second. I was like, yo, what the actual fuck? 20,000? Now listen, I've seen some shit before. I've seen friends accidentally charge stuff to their parents' cards. Maybe buy some Xbox games or rack up a few $100 in purchases. But $20,000? That was a new level of crazy. Brian starts crying and he says, "Mom, I didn't buy anything, I swear, it wasn't me." And she wasn't having it. She goes, "What do you mean it wasn't you? You're the only one with the card number. Who else could it have been?" Brian's sobbing now, and he says, "It wasn't me, it was my friend." And I'm sitting there like, "Your friend? You gave the card to somebody else?" And he nods, still crying, and says, "Yeah, I let my friend Aaron use it to buy a game on Xbox, but that was it. He said he wasn't going to save the card info." I remember thinking to myself, yo, this is so fucked. His mom just loses it. She's like, "Yeah, no shit, it's not good. Who's Aaron? Where does he live?" Brian, through his tears, starts giving her all the information he has about Aaron, where he lives, his phone number, everything. It was a screaming match for a good 10 minutes. And finally, Brian's dad turns to me and says, "Hey, I'm going to take you home. This is a family matter, and you don't need to be involved." I couldn't get out of there fast enough, honestly. So his dad drives me home, and when I get back, my mom's like, "You're back early. What happened?" I told her everything that went down, and she couldn't believe it. I mean, who could? $20,000 charged to your credit card is just insane. But here's the thing, it didn't end there. After I left, Brian's mom contacted the credit card company to try and figure out what was going on. They were able to track down who made the purchases, and they found out it was Aaron. They managed to get his address and his parents' contact information because, at the end of the day, Aaron was just a kid too. He was like 14 years old. So they got in contact with Aaron's parents and they disputed the charges. Luckily, they were able to get about 90 to 95% of the charges taken off the card because Aaron had made all those purchases within a very short time frame, just a couple of days. So here's what really happened. Aaron was an Xbox friend of Brian's, and Brian, trying to be nice, gave Aaron his mom's credit card number so Aaron could buy a game. And Aaron, being the little shit he was, decided to go on a shopping spree with it. He racked up 20 grand in charges in just a few days. Like, what the hell was he even buying? But yeah, most of the charges got disputed and taken off, thankfully. Aaron's parents were obviously notified, and Aaron got in a ton of trouble. From what Brian told me later, Aaron got grounded for a long time. Brian got grounded too for being dumb enough to give his mom's credit card number to some kid online. Honestly though, I kinda blame Brian's mom too. I mean, why would you give your kid access to a credit card with such a high limit? Even if you're well off, it's just not a good idea to hand a kid that kind of power. Of course he's gonna do something stupid with it, or give it to someone else who will. Anyway, it was a super weird and awkward situation, but I'm just glad I wasn't the one in trouble. I may have been a dumb kid at times, but I never gave out my parents' credit card info and ended up losing them 20 grand. So at least I can say that. And yeah, there's definitely a moral to this story. If you have access to your parents' credit card, which I did at one point when I was a kid, don't go spending it on stuff you haven't been given permission to buy. And definitely don't give that number out to anyone else, especially over the internet. Just be responsible, guys. It's not worth the trouble, trust me. Anyway, that's the story of how my friend got into some deep shit for trusting the wrong person. I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. And feel free to leave your own story times in the comments below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Alright, so I've been reading the comments, okay? I've been seeing what you guys have been saying. Everyone keeps saying, "Bro, bring back the long story times. I don't want these 8-minute videos, I want the 18 to 30-minute ones." You guys want the long story times. You guys like it long. Okay, pause. You guys like the videos long, alright? I can't talk today, but yeah, today's story time is one that I haven't told because I thought it was too long. This one took place back in 2014, and I've wanted to tell it ever since I started this channel. But I didn't because yeah, I thought it was too long. I thought no one was going to sit through this. I really thought it needed to be shorter, and I didn't want to leave out any details because honestly, those details are what make it such a crazy story. This is one of my favorite stories of all time. Like, no joke, this is one of my craziest and most eventful ones, and it deserves to be told in full. And now that I see you guys like the longer videos, I'm down to tell it, and I hope you enjoy it. If you do, leave a like on the video. I have tons of stories that are super long, like not just 15 minutes. We're talking 45-minute stories. If you guys want those, I'll do them, but let me know, okay? Anyway, let's get into it. Today's story all takes place back in 2014, and I can't lie, I wasn't in the best headspace. I did not like school at all. The school I was going to at the time really didn't mesh with me. I felt like a lot of the kids there were super rude, and honestly, I thought they were pretty bad kids, which I know sounds rich coming from me, the guy who's about to tell a story called Hiding from the Police. But seriously, these kids were a different breed. Yeah, I snuck out sometimes, I smoked with my friends, I did things that were definitely not great for my age. Obviously I advise against that for anyone watching. But these kids were on another level, dude. They would steal cars, they'd rob people. One kid literally got arrested at school for trying to break into a car right in the school parking lot. Like, these kids were just built different and not in a good way. I did have some friends at this school, don't get me wrong, but the majority of the people there just put me in a bad mood. And honestly, I was in a bad place mentally. I was angry, I was frustrated, and I didn't want to be there. I'd wake up every morning and just dread going to school. It sucked. But anyway, let's get into the day in question. This all starts off like any other day back in 2014. I had to get up early, like 6 AM. I got up, took a shower, got ready, and was out the door. I caught the bus and I went to school. Now, the first 3 periods of the day were actually pretty normal. Everything was chill. I went through the motions, nothing really worth mentioning. But then we got to my 4th period, and this is where everything started. This was the class I had right before lunch, and by this time, I was always just itching to get out of there. I was antsy, just counting down the seconds until lunch because I couldn't take it anymore. So I'm sitting in the back of the class, completely zoned out, staring at the clock, just counting down until I could get out of there. And I wasn't paying attention to the teacher at all, like not even a little bit. And of course she notices that. She does that thing teachers love to do when they notice you're zoning out. She calls on me to answer a question. She goes, "Austin." And I'm just like, "Huh?" She repeats, "Do you want to answer the question I just asked?" And I'm like, I didn't hear the question." And she gives me this look, like she's annoyed, and says, "What did the character DK do for a living?" Now, this was an English class, and we were reading some book that I absolutely did not care about. I hadn't read it, so I had no idea who DK was, let alone what he did for a living. And I wasn't going to pretend to know, so I just told her, "I'm sorry, I didn't read that far, I don't know the answer." And she's like, "Just give me your best guess." So I go, a janitor?" And the entire class starts laughing at me. Then, my teacher, who's supposed to be the adult in the room, also laughs, and that just set me off. Like, it's one thing for the other kids to laugh at me, whatever, right? But the teacher, she's supposed to be the professional, the one who's supposed to be above that kind of stuff, and she's laughing at me too, and she doesn't even tell me what the correct answer was. She just says, "No, that's wrong," and moves on to the next question for someone else. I was fuming. So, I put my head down on my desk and I'm just done with the day already. Then, not even 5 minutes later, I start having to pee really bad because before class I downed an entire Gatorade from the vending machine. I'm like, okay, I need to go to the bathroom. So I get up and walk to the front of the room to ask the teacher for a pass. Now, she's in the middle of speaking, so I knew this was probably a bad time, but I really had to go. She stops what she's saying, looks at me and says, "What do you want, Austin?" I tell her, "Can I go to the bathroom?" She just looks at me and goes, "No." And I'm like, "I really have to go," and she goes, "I don't care. You should have been paying attention earlier." She's literally punishing me for not knowing the answer to her question by making me hold my bladder, which, might end in me embarrassing myself in front of the entire class. So I'm like, "Please, I really have to go." And she goes, "Nope, sit back down." At this point, I'm just furious. She's embarrassed me, she's laughing at me, and now she's trying to make me piss myself in front of everyone. So I said something I shouldn't have, something I regret. I go, "If you don't let me go to the bathroom, I'm going to go over to your desk and pee in your coffee cup. You're cool." And the whole class bursts out laughing and she's like, "You're not funny, Austin. Sit down." So I turn around like I'm going back to my seat, but then I do a 180 and sprint for the door. She tries to stop me, but she slips on her way over and I manage to get out of the room. I ran to the bathroom and she didn't chase me. I think she just gave up once I made it out the door. So I go to the bathroom, but I know there's no way I'm going back to that class. I'm already in enough trouble. So I decide, screw it, I'm done with school for the day. I walk out of the bathroom and head straight for the nearest exit. Across the street from my school, there's this little strip of restaurants. There's a burger place and a donut shop. I head to the donut shop, get myself a booth, and just sit there on my phone. I'm scrolling through Twitter, texting my friends, and just killing time. I text a bunch of my friends from school, and they're all replying like, "What are you doing? I'm still in class." But one of my friends, we'll call him Sam, texts me back, and he's like, "Where you at?" I tell him I'm at the donut shop across the street and he just replies, "Bet." I'm like, "Okay, what's he up to?" About 10 minutes later, Sam walks in. He waves at me, comes over, sits down and is like, "Yo, what's good?" I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing here?" And he just says, "I'm skipping. Let's do something." So we get up and go to the front to buy some donuts. The lady at the counter gives us this look like she knows we're supposed to be in school, but she doesn't say anything and sells us the donuts. We go sit back down and we're just eating them, talking and trying to figure out what to do for the rest of the day. A few minutes later, the door opens and I see 2 police officers walk in. Of course, they're there for donuts, like something straight out of a movie. I look at Sam and he's like, "Dude, we're screwed." I tell him, Nah, just chill. We'll finish our donuts, act normal, and they won't think anything of it." Sam's like, "Bro, I'm wearing my backpack. It's obvious we're skipping." I'm like, "Just relax. They probably won't care." The cops order their donuts, walk right past us, and one of them even nods at me like, "What's up?" They sit down at a booth in front of us, and I'm thinking, okay, we're good. Me and Sam look at each other in relief, and we just go back to our conversation. We keep it chill though, not talking about skipping school with 2 cops sitting right in front of us. 5 minutes later, we're done with our donuts, and we decide it's time to get out of there. We throw away our trash and we start walking towards the exit. As we're about to leave, I hear one of the cops' radios go off. It's our school cop on the radio saying something about 2 students skipping school. He describes what they're wearing: a red backpack, black t-shirt, black jeans, and red sneakers. Sam is wearing a red backpack and a black t-shirt. I'm wearing black jeans and red sneakers. I look at Sam and he looks at me and we both know what's happening. Without a word, we both just book it for the door. We run out into the parking lot as fast as we can and we sprint down a nearby bike trail. We're running for our lives, not looking back, just trying to get away. We run for what feels like forever until we finally find a park. It's pretty empty and we sit down on a bench, completely out of breath. We're both paranoid, looking around, expecting the cops to show up any second. But we don't see anyone. We catch our breath and I'm like, dude, did they chase us? Sam's like, I don't think so, bro. I think we could have just walked out with her. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I wasn't gonna risk it. He's like, me neither. We sit there for a bit longer, trying to calm down, and I'm like, we gotta keep moving. We can't stay here. Sam's like, where do you want to go? I'm like, the mall is 2 miles away. Let's just walk there. He's like, bet. We start walking to the mall, and it takes us about 40 minutes to get there. We get in through the food court entrance, and we sit down at a table, just trying to lay low. At this point, school's almost over, so we're close to being in the clear. I'm feeling pretty confident. I decide to get a coffee to celebrate, so I get up, buy a coffee, and come back to the table. Then, Sam's phone starts going off. He looks at it and says, oh shit, it's my mom. I'm like, you gonna answer it? He's like, hell no, she knows I'm skipping. He sends it to voicemail, and his mom immediately texts him, you're skipping school? Call me right now. I'm like, well, that's it. School definitely called our parents. I'm gonna be in so much trouble later. But like I said, that's later's problem. Right now, we're still good, so we might as well enjoy the time we have left. We get up and start walking around the mall, going into different stores, just window shopping. We're broke, so we can't buy anything, but we're just having fun, looking at stuff. Then we walk into this shoe store, and we immediately start messing around. Sam tries on these random skate shoes and starts dancing in them, like moonwalking and bending the toe. One of the employees, this girl who's probably around 19 or 20, sees him and yells at us, hey, don't do that. You're going to crease them. Sam's like, I'm just trying them on. Is that illegal? She's like, no, but you're not going to buy them, so don't ruin them. And Sam gets all defensive. I'm not ruining them, and starts dancing again. She's like, I'm calling security if you don't stop. I'm like, Sam, cut it out. Put the shoes back, we're leaving. She's like, yeah, listen to your friend. Sam finally puts the shoes back, but as we're walking out, he throws her the middle finger and mouths, fuck you. I grab his hand and pull it down. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, screw her, she can't do anything. I'm like, yeah, she can call security. He's like, what are they gonna do? Arrest us? They're mall cops. I'm like, oh my god, let's just get out of here. We head for the nearest exit, but as we're leaving, we see the security truck parked outside. The security guard makes eye contact with me and starts driving over to us. I'm like, oh shit, they definitely called security. Sam's like, what do you want to do? Run or talk to him? I'm like, I don't know. Sam's like, let's just talk to him. He's a mall cop, what's he gonna do? So, the guard pulls up, parks, and gets out. He's like, you boys here with an adult? I'm like, no. He goes, you know there's a curfew, right? You can't be here if you're under 17 without an adult. I'm like, oh, sorry, I forgot. Sam, of course, has to make it worse. He goes, well, I'm 17. Can I be his guardian? Sam is not 17. We're both 15, and we look it. The guard is like, I don't think you're 17, and even if you were, you're not family. You can't stay. I'm like, okay, we'll leave. But Sam keeps arguing. That's bullshit. I'm a paying customer. He's not. I'm the one who bought a coffee. The guard's like, you can't go back in the mall. I grab Sam by the arm and pull him away. I'm like, let's go. The guard's like, have a great day. Just trying to be nice. And Sam turns around, throws him the finger, and goes, fuck you, rent-a-cop. The guard gets pissed, jumps on his radio, and starts calling something in. I'm like, Sam, we gotta go. We start running, and the guard's like, stop. We run across the street to a grocery store and sit down in the cafe area. I'm like, Sam, what is wrong with you today? You're gonna get us in so much trouble. He's like, everyone today has a power trip. I'm like, no, you do. These people are just doing their jobs and you're acting like a jerk. He's like, sorry, I'm stressed. I'm gonna get grounded. I'm like, yeah, me too, but you don't have to make it worse. We think it's over. We're chilling in the grocery store, but then we see 2 cops walk in. It's the same cops from the donut shop. I'm like, Sam, look. He turns around, sees them, and is like, no fucking way. I'm like, we gotta go. He's like, let's leave. I'm like, we can't. They're right by the exit. So we just sit there, hoping they don't see us. They talk to an employee for a bit, and then finally walk away. We get up and start heading for the exit, trying to be casual, but as we're leaving, I look back and see them staring at us. One of them points at me and says, stop. Sam looks at me and goes, part two? And he just takes off running. I'm right behind him, and we're out of there, sprinting as fast as we can. We run out of the grocery store, down another bike trail. We keep running until we find a huge tree that looks climbable. We climb up about 20 feet off the ground and just sit there, hoping we lost them. A couple of minutes later, we hear footsteps and radio chatter. The cops come jogging down the trail right under us. We both hold our breath, not making a sound. They look around for a bit, then keep going down the trail. After a few minutes, we hear them coming back and they pass under us again, heading back to their car. We wait another 20 minutes just to be sure, and then we climb down. We're exhausted, but we're in the clear. We run home, split up halfway there, and I make it back to my house. My mom's still at work, and one of my brothers is home, so I just lay down on the couch and start watching SpongeBob. I think I'm good, but then I hear the garage door open. My mom's home early. She comes in, looks at me, and goes, "What the fuck did you do?" I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" She's like, No, what did you do?" "I got a call from the principal saying you were skipping and the school cop was looking for you. Then I got another message saying you ran from the cops twice." She's pissed, and then she says, "I've been calling you all day. Why didn't you answer?" I look at my phone and I realize I blocked her number 2 days ago after an argument and I forgot to unblock it. She's even angrier now. She goes, "You're grounded for months and tomorrow we're going to school to meet with the principal." So the next day I had to go to the school with my mom and meet with the principal, the school cop, and a couple of other staff members. They decided I had to be moved to a different school for a couple of months, basically a school for troublemakers. The school cop tells me, "If you were an adult and did what you did, you'd be in jail. You're lucky you're just a kid. Don't ever run from the cops again." So I got moved to this other school, and guess what? Sam was there too. We both got the same punishment and we started on the same day. We were the only people we knew there, so we stuck together. We couldn't talk until we saw each other at school since we were both grounded and didn't have our phones. I was like, "Yo, you're here too?" He's like, "Yeah, for a couple of months." I'm like, "Same." And that's how we ended up in this bad kid school together. We both served our time there, then went back to our regular high school. I was grounded for 3 months. I had nothing. The only thing I had was an old beat up laptop my mum thought was broken. I used that to make YouTube videos. So yeah, that's the grind I was on for you guys. And that's the story of how I skipped school, ran from the cops, went to the mall, got kicked out, ran from the cops again, hid in a tree, and then got kicked out of my regular school for a couple of months. It was insane, but I thought you guys would enjoy it because I know you love the long videos. So yeah, that's the story. 36 minutes long. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. I definitely have more like this if you want to hear them. Feel free to leave your own story times in the comments and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys later. Peace. Yo, what's good everybody? It's Austin here, or Luna. So tell me why last night while I was streaming, I legit fell out of my chair. The funniest part? I smacked my head on the back of my couch, right on the corner. Probably gave myself a nice little concussion. Classic, right? But that's not why we're here today. I've been live on Twitch and Kick the last couple of days, streaming every night, and I'm planning to keep that going. So, after this video goes up, if you want to come watch me, I'll be live. Come check it out. But anyway, today's story time is one that I'm actually pretty excited to tell you. This is one of those stories I've been holding on to for a while, for a couple of reasons. One, just like yesterday's story, it's a long one, and two, I didn't want the person I'm talking about, the hacker, to know they were actually getting to me. I didn't want them to have the satisfaction of knowing they had my personal information and that it was affecting me. So, I waited until it all died down, and now it's finally safe to talk about it. So yeah, let's get into it. This is definitely the scariest hacker experience I've ever had in my life. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you know I've been messed with by all kinds of people, especially hackers. I've been swatted, had pizzas sent to my door, even had tarantulas sent to my house. Once I even had a voodoo doll sent to me. These hacker types just love messing with me, and I guess making these story times about it just encourages them even more. They probably want their own video on the channel, so they go the extra mile. Luckily, it doesn't happen as much nowadays. I have a better system to protect my information now, but this was by far the worst. Alright, so today's story takes place about 2 years ago, towards the end of 2022. Back then, I was living in a different house from where I am now. I had just moved into this house a couple of months before, and I was really excited about it. It was a new 12-month lease, so I still had about 10 months to go, and everything about it felt like a fresh start. I loved it for a lot of reasons. It was close to my family, it was new, and most importantly, no hackers knew where I lived. I was very careful not to let anyone, not even my friends, post anything that could reveal my address. I wanted to keep this place secure. The first 2 months were great. I settled in, got all my stuff unpacked, and started streaming again. Everything was going smooth, but then, one night while I was streaming, things went south. I was live on Twitch, had my face cam on, and was having a great time. I think there were about 400, 500 viewers. I was playing Fall Guys, which was making a bit of a resurgence at the time, and everyone was just vibing. At some point, someone in chat asked what my setup looked like and wanted to see my desk, my monitors, all that. I thought, sure, why not? So I grabbed my webcam and turned it around to show my setup. I completely forgot to check what was on my desk beforehand. Turns out there was a piece of mail sitting there, a letter with my full name, my address, my zip code, everything. I didn't realize it was in the frame until it was too late. I started freaking out on the inside like, oh no, please tell me nobody saw that. I quickly turned the camera back, hoping it had gone unnoticed. But of course, some random dude in the chat said, hey man, I think you just leaked your address. I panicked. I didn't want people talking about it, so I timed him out for like 600 seconds, just trying to control the situation. I thought maybe he was the only one who noticed. For a moment, it seemed like everything was fine. No one else said anything, and I thought I had gotten away with it. But when his timeout ended, he came back into the chat, angry. He said, I was just trying to help, but since you timed me out, screw it. And he pasted my address for all 500 people to see. My heart sank. I banned him immediately, but the damage was done. Fast forward a couple of days, I'm just chilling on my computer, scrolling through Twitter when I get a DM from an IRL friend, someone I went to school with. He says, yo man, I just wanted to let you know that I found this online. I'm not sure if it's your actual address, but it popped up when I was searching for your channel. He sends me a link and I click it. It was a website that had my personal information, everything. My name, address, phone number, even my old phone number. It had information about my parents and my brother. It was way more than what I had accidentally shown on stream, and I started freaking out. I didn't know how they got all this information. I've been doxxed before, but this was on another level. It had my entire family listed. I immediately started emailing everyone I knew at YouTube, hoping someone could help me get this taken down. But the replies all said the same thing. They couldn't help. So, I started to accept the fact that this was just out there, and I'd have to learn to live with it. I hoped no hackers would come across it, but of course my fears came true. 2 days later, I'm on Discord, and I get a friend request from a username I didn't recognize. At first I thought it was just someone from my community server, but then I realized the name looked familiar. I had heard it before from another YouTuber friend. He had told me about this hacker who had messed with him, swatted him, even called the power company to shut off his electricity. This dude was bad news. I immediately took a screenshot of the friend request and sent it to my friend, asking if it was the same guy. He replied with, block him. So, I blocked the account and called my friend. He confirmed it was the same hacker who had messed with him. He told me to stay away from him and pray that he didn't have my address. But then it hit me. My address was literally online now, easy for anyone to find. I told my friend and he tried to calm me down saying, maybe it's not what you think, maybe he's just a fan. Not even 10 minutes later, I get another friend request from the same guy. He made a new account, same profile picture, same display name, just a different tag. My friend told me, maybe you should just add him, see what he wants. So, I added him. I messaged him first and said, yo. He replied with a winky face and said, what's up, Austin? I asked him if I could help him with anything, and he said, yeah, actually I need like 2 grand right now. Can you send me that in Bitcoin? I told him I didn't have any Bitcoin, and he said he didn't care. He wanted me to buy some and send it to him. He was being very demanding, and it was clear he wasn't a fan. He just wanted money, and he wanted it fast. I wasn't about to bow down to him though, because I knew if I did, it would never end. If I gave him the 2K, he'd come back asking for more. So I told him no. He got really upset and said, if you don't send me the 2K, I'm gonna ruin your life. I replied, sorry man, I can't help you. He sent me the Bitcoin address and said, last chance, send 2K or I'm gonna ruin your life. I replied with just one word, sorry. He then said, okay, have it your way. At this point, I didn't know what else to say, so I just stopped replying. About 2 minutes later, he sends me a link to that website with all my information and says, damn dude, I didn't even have to do any digging. It was just on Google for me to find. Now, I'm sitting there thinking, what do I even do at this point? This guy has all of my information, my family's information, and he's clearly one of the scariest hackers out there. I told him I wasn't going to give him the money, and he replied with the most messed up thing I've ever seen someone say to me, I'm going to kidnap your family. I told my friend what he said, and my friend was like, "Bro, I told you this guy's messed up. He's just trying to scare you into giving him money." He tried to calm me down, saying the hacker was probably not even in the country and wouldn't actually do anything. So, I tried to ignore the messages. After about an hour, the hacker went offline and I thought maybe I was in the clear. Later that night, my friend and I were playing CS:GO and I'm in my house alone. No roommates, no friends over, just me. Suddenly, I hear a pounding on my front door. I freaked out thinking maybe it was the SWAT team or something worse. Maybe this guy lived near me or hired someone to come after me. I told my friend I'd be right back and went to check. I looked through the peephole and saw two police officers. I actually sighed with relief. I know that sounds crazy, but I was just happy it wasn't some psychopath at my door. I opened it, and the cops, who I had met before because of previous swatting incidents, told me someone had made a phony phone call saying I was threatening to hurt myself. They knew it wasn't real, but they still had to check. I explained I was being blackmailed by a hacker who had my address, and they offered to help if I had more information on the guy. Unfortunately, I didn't. The whole interaction lasted maybe 5 minutes, and then they left. I went back upstairs and told my friend what happened. He felt bad for me, but I told him it could have been worse. A bit later, I got a message from the hacker. "Did my friends come to visit you?" He was basically rubbing it in. I ignored him, not wanting to give him the satisfaction. Then, 5 minutes later, he messaged again, saying, "You can't ignore me forever, Austin." I ignored that too, but then he sent another message. "I'm swatting your parents next, so you better reply." I had to reply. I told him to leave my family out of it and that he didn't even have their correct address, which was a lie. He replied, "I think I do have the correct address, and if you don't give me the $2,000 in the next 5 minutes, I'm swatting both of them." I told him no, and he said, "Maybe it will end, maybe it won't. Why don't we find out?" I just said no again. After that, I called the police station, told them who I was, and explained the situation, that the hacker was probably about to send fake calls to my parents' addresses. They said they'd make a note of it. I then called my mom and dad to warn them, and they understood. About 10 minutes later, the cops showed up at their houses, but luckily, it was the same situation as before. They knew it was a phony call and only sent a couple of officers. After a short talk, they left. After that, I thought maybe the hacker had exhausted all his options. I didn't think he could do much more. I stayed up for a few hours to see if anything else would happen, but nothing did. I finally went to bed, hoping it was over. The next morning, I woke up to something I couldn't have prepared for. I woke up around 11:30 a.m. and immediately noticed something was off. Nothing on my phone was loading, my Wi-Fi was down, and my data wasn't working either, which was weird because I live next to a cell tower. I went downstairs to check my modem and router, but they were both off even though they were plugged in. Then I noticed the stove and microwave clocks were off, and my TV wasn't turning on. I realized my power was out. I didn't know if it was the hacker or just a power outage in the area, but I had a bad feeling. On top of that, my water wasn't working either. I knew this wasn't a coincidence, the hacker had done something. So, I took my laptop and walked to a nearby coffee shop with free Wi-Fi. The first thing I did was check my Discord, and sure enough, I had a message from the hacker saying, "Hey man, how's your day going so far?" He had sent it a couple of hours earlier. I replied, "What did you do?" And he answered, "Did your power come back yet?" I told him no, and he said, "I shut off your power, your phone bill, and your water." I begged him to leave me alone, telling him I wasn't going to give him the money. After that, I started making phone calls, first to the power company, then the water company, and finally my phone provider. I explained that someone had called pretending to be me and got my services shut off. They all helped me get things turned back on and put security pins on my accounts. Unfortunately, because my phone had been disconnected, I lost my phone number. I had to get a new one, which sucked, but at least it meant the hacker didn't have it anymore. I thought that was the end of it. I got my services back, secured everything, and put two-factor authentication on my accounts. Later that day, I called my YouTuber friend and told him everything that happened. He said the hacker had done the same thing to him, but after shutting off his power, he never heard from him again. He thought maybe that was the hacker's final move. I hoped he was right because I was running out of patience. The rest of the day, I tried to calm down. I kept checking in with my parents to make sure everything was okay, and luckily the hacker hadn't messed with them any further. But that evening, as I was uploading a new video, I noticed something strange. I was logged out of Twitter. I tried to log back in, but my password wasn't working. I knew my Twitter had been hacked. I managed to reset the password because I still had my backup email on the account. I got back in and secured it, but I realized the hacker might have used my old phone number to get into my accounts. I was in a race against time to change the phone number and password on everything: YouTube, Facebook, Discord, everything. I managed to secure all my accounts before he could do any real damage. A few minutes later, I got a message from the hacker. Wow, you're fast. It was clear he had tried to hack my accounts, but I had beaten him to it. After that, for about a week and a half, the hacker kept messing with me. He sent the cops to my house again, sent flowers with a note that said, "Send me Bitcoin," and even sent pizza to my mom's house. It was relentless, but eventually he got bored and stopped. About a week later, he tried to message me again, but I ignored it, and he left me alone. A week after that, I reached out to a friend who was kind of a hacker himself. I told him everything that happened and asked if he could help me get the website with my information taken down. He had a friend who worked at Google, and a couple of days later, the website was no longer showing up in search results. It was still up if you knew the direct link, but after about 4 months, the kid who put it up stopped paying for the domain and it went offline for good. So yeah, that's the story. It was one of the scariest encounters I've ever had with a hacker, but in the end, I was okay. It was stressful and annoying, but I got through it. I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. So throughout the years, I've shared countless stories of crazy girlfriends, crazy moms, crazy dads. Just a whole lot of crazy, right? But I've never really told a story about a crazy girlfriend and a crazy mom at the same time. This is definitely one of a kind, and I think you guys will enjoy it, so I hope you do. Leave a like on the video if you do, and let's get into it. Today's story time all takes place back in 2017. At the time, I was living out in California, but I was about to move back home. I had maybe a month left on my lease out in LA. I also had a girlfriend back in my hometown in New York, who I was planning to move back to. She was cool. Her family, though, was a little bit much. And when I say much, I mean they were pretty invasive. Like every time I'd go over to her house while visiting New York, they'd come downstairs while we were watching a movie, sit down and start asking me all kinds of weird personal questions, stuff that most people wouldn't even think to ask. They'd ask me how much money I made from YouTube, down to the exact numbers. Her dad even once asked if I could shout out his business in one of my videos. It was awkward and a little rude, honestly, but at the end of the day, none of that mattered to me because my girlfriend was a lot better than her family. She didn't inherit those leechy, invasive traits, and that was all I cared about. Unfortunately though, things went to absolute hell 2 months later. So, like I said, at this time I was still living in California. One day in 2017, a couple of months after I'd last visited New York, I was just chilling in my LA apartment, in my bedroom, on my phone, when I got a FaceTime call from my girlfriend. I picked up and was like, "Hey, what's up?" She looked really excited and said, "Guess what? My mom is visiting San Diego next week and I'm going with her. And since San Diego is only a couple of hours away from LA, I figured we could hang out." Now, at that point, I already had a flight planned for the next week. I was supposed to go to Atlanta for an event that I'd had scheduled for months, and I said, "Oh, fuck." She looked confused and asked, "What's wrong?" I explained that I was going to Atlanta and that I'd only have a day or two in LA before my flight, so we'd have very little time to hang out. I could see she was upset, and honestly I was too. I wanted to see her. It had been 2 months since we'd last been together in person, but I couldn't just cancel my event, especially since I'd already booked my flight. So we agreed that we'd see each other for the couple of days that I had, and then I'd head out to Atlanta. Fast forward a week, she landed in San Diego. Instead of making her drive to LA, I drove down to her. It was a 2.5-hour drive, but I wanted to make things easier for her, especially since I knew I had to leave soon. We hung out for those 2 days and it was great. Her mom was there too. And, just like her dad, her mom was pretty annoying, asking all those weird questions. But honestly, it was fine because I got to spend time with my girlfriend and that was all that mattered. After those 2 days, I headed back to LA, packed for my trip, and flew to Atlanta. And this is where things get interesting. In my LA apartment, I had cameras set up inside, not outside, just inside. I had them to make sure everything was fine while I was gone, like making sure no one broke in or that nothing went wrong, like a fire or whatever. Originally, I'd bought those cameras because I once babysat my friend's dog while he was on vacation, and I wanted to keep an eye on the dog while I was out. But after that, they just became useful for security. Anyway, that's all you need to know. I had cameras inside my apartment. So I touched down in Atlanta and was there for about 2 days. While I was at the event, I got a notification on my phone from the app I used for the cameras. It said, "Movement detected." Now, keep in mind, nobody was supposed to be in my apartment. I had no pets, no one was staying there, and all the windows were closed. So getting a "movement detected" notification made me panic a little. I swiped open the notification, hoping it was just, like, a piece of furniture falling over or something. Anything but someone breaking in. It took about 20 seconds for the video to load, and when it did, I saw someone climbing through my window. Then I saw another person climbing in right behind them, and they looked really familiar. too familiar. It was my girlfriend and her mom. I was like, yo, why the fuck are my girlfriend and her mother breaking into my apartment right now? Naturally, I immediately closed the app and called my girlfriend. She picked up and I said, hey, what are you up to? She replied, not much, just hanging out at the hotel. I said, the hotel? In San Diego? And she said, yeah, where else would I be? I asked, you're not in LA? She said, no. So I asked, you're not in my apartment right now, walking around with your mom? And she hung up, immediately. No hesitation, just click. So I texted her, listen, you have 1 minute to get out of my apartment and give me an explanation. I don't want to call the cops, but I will if I have to. There's no excuse for you to be in my place when I'm not there, without my permission. A minute later, I checked the cameras again, and they were gone. I saw the video of them climbing back out the window. A couple of minutes after that, she texted me this long paragraph explaining that she was insecure and thought I was cheating on her, which made no sense because I'd never given her any reason to think that. I'd never done anything suspicious. She just had this weird feeling, and apparently that was enough for her to drive 2.5 hours to LA, break into my apartment, and snoop around like she was some kind of detective. I texted her back, you've got to understand how insane that is, right? You just had a hunch that I was cheating and your mom backed you up, so you both drove to LA and broke into my place? She kept saying she was sorry and that she knew she was wrong, but then she said something that really pissed me off. She said, it was my mom's idea. I didn't want to go through with it. I replied, are you serious? She said, yeah, I didn't want to throw her under the bus, but it was her idea. I told her, give me your mom's number. She asked, what are you gonna do? I said, I just want to talk to her. I want to know what the hell she was thinking. She told me, just be nice. I said, I will. And she gave me her mom's number. I called, and after 2 rings, she picked up. She said, hello. I said, hey, this is Austin, your daughter's boyfriend. She said, oh, hey, Austin. I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. I cut her off. No, hold on. What did my girlfriend mean when she said this was your idea? I need to know. She sighed and said, listen, I just had a suspicion. You're out in LA, in Hollywood, with all these followers, and my daughter is all the way across the country. I didn't trust it. I thought maybe you were being unfaithful, and I wanted to see if that was true. I said, okay, so instead of, I don't know, hitting me up and asking or trying to find out through other means, you thought it was a good idea to drive 2.5 hours, break into my apartment, and snoop around? You're an adult, and you thought that was a good idea? She admitted, honestly, that was probably the most immature thing I've ever done in my entire life. I'm so sorry. I'm embarrassed. Please don't blame my daughter for this. Thank you for not calling the police. She kept going on and on about how wrong she was and how I was right, but I didn't care. She still did it, and that was all that mattered to me. After 5 minutes of her apologizing, I said, all right, whatever. Have a good one. And I hung up. Then I called my girlfriend and broke up with her. Because even if it was her mom's idea, she still went along with it. You don't break into your boyfriend's place because you're insecure. That's not an excuse. You don't get to do something like that just because you're feeling insecure. That's not how it works. So yeah, that whole situation cost me my relationship, cost me my trust in that girl, and honestly made me lose a little bit of faith in the adult generation. What kind of grown person thinks it's a good idea to break into someone's home to see if they're cheating? When I got back to LA, I checked the window they broke in through and one of the locks was completely snapped off. There had only been one lock on the window because the other one had broken off before I moved in, so it wasn't too hard for them to force it open. Out of all the relationships I've been in, and all the ways they've ended, and all the crazy things I've experienced, this has Toby one of the weirdest, most ridiculous endings. Like, where do you get the nerve to do something like that? So yeah, moral of the story, don't break into people's apartments or homes. It's illegal. I don't care how suspicious you are, breaking into their house is not the way to go. But yeah guys, that's the story of how my girlfriend and her mom broke into my LA apartment to try and catch me cheating, and then I broke up with her. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a like on the video, and feel free to share your own story times in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys later. Peace. What's good guys, Austin here, or Luna, and today's story is probably one of my favorite stories of all time. It's got everything, it's crazy, it's funny, it's got a little bit of suspense, just a whole lot going on. I hope you enjoy it. Leave a like on the video if you do, and let's get into it. So, I've talked about it a million times on this channel. How back in the day, when I was a teenager, I loved exploring abandoned buildings. You know, I've told you guys about the times I went into abandoned hospitals, old psychiatric wards, schools, and all kinds of places, just to explore, take pictures, and make some memories. And some of those are still my favorite memories to this day. But obviously, there's a huge risk with exploring abandoned places. You could inhale asbestos or other toxins, run into some homeless folks that might be dangerous, or end up walking on a floor with weak structural integrity and fall through. There's a lot that could go wrong. So if you're watching this and thinking, that sounds cool, I want to do that, please don't. Learn from my mistakes, alright? Because today's story is one of the craziest experiences I've had while exploring an abandoned place. So this story takes place when I was 18 years old. It was the month right after my 18th birthday, and I was hanging out in my hometown in New York. I was with 4 friends, and we had absolutely nothing to do. We were just driving around the city, bored out of our minds, listening to music, and trying to think of something to do. Then my friend John speaks up and says, "Yo, you guys want to explore an abandoned spot?" We were all intrigued, but also a bit unsure. It had been a while since we last explored an abandoned place. My friend John continued, "There's this abandoned mansion that's been untouched for like 15 years, and it still looks really good. I want to check it out." One of our friends was super down, but me and another friend were kind of hesitant. We were all 18 now, and getting caught could mean getting arrested. But after about 20 minutes of having absolutely nothing to do, me and the other friend who were hesitant said, "You know what? Fuck it, let's do it." So, we drove about 30 minutes outside of town to this abandoned mansion. And when we got there, John wasn't kidding. For being abandoned for 15 years, the place looked really well kept. It was a legit mansion, and from the outside, it didn't even look abandoned. It looked like the people were just away on vacation. I remember turning to John and asking, "Are you sure this place is abandoned? It really doesn't look like it." John nodded and pulled out his phone. He showed me this website that was basically a database for abandoned places in our area. He pulled up the listing for this mansion, and it had a whole backstory. Apparently the family that used to live there couldn't pay the mortgage, and the house got foreclosed. It ended up being owned by the government and had just been sitting there vacant ever since. So, we were convinced. We parked right in the driveway, which, in hindsight, was really stupid because it was a dead giveaway that someone was there. But it ended up being a lifesaver, and you'll see why in a minute. Anyway, we parked in the driveway, walked up to the front porch, and of course, the front door was locked. So we looped around to the back of the house, and the sliding glass door was completely gone. There was just an open space that led to the back of the house, so we just walked right in. Once we got inside, the back of the house definitely looked more run down and abandoned than the front. It was a lot more rotted and worn out. That was when I thought, okay, this place is definitely abandoned. The whole downstairs was kind of fucked. There was mold everywhere, everything was damp, and it smelled awful. Clearly, with no door to protect it, the weather had completely destroyed that part of the house over the years. We explored the downstairs for a bit, but nothing too out of the ordinary. Then we decided to go upstairs. I led the way, and as I got about halfway up the stairs, I suddenly heard someone yell, "Hey!" from the top of the stairs. I stopped immediately, turned to my friends, and they all just froze behind me. I whispered, "What the fuck do I do? Do I respond?" John whispered back, "Let's just leave. Let's get the fuck out of here." But then, before we could do anything, the voice yelled again, "Hey, who's in here?" At that point, I was like, "Yo, is this place even abandoned? Does someone actually live here?" John was just as confused. He said, "I don't know, dude. Let's just leave." We turned around and started booking it down the stairs to get out of the house, and as we were running for the back door, I heard someone come barreling down the stairs behind us, full speed. I turned around just for a split second and saw this dude, almost completely naked, wearing only his underwear and a beanie. He had long grey hair, a big grey beard, and he looked like he was in his 50s or 60s, and in his hands was a shotgun. I yelled, "Run! Run! Run!" And all of us ran as fast as we could out of the back door, not even looking back. We ran straight for the car, and thank God we had parked in the driveway, because if we had parked anywhere else, we probably wouldn't have made it. We jumped in the car, and my friend started it up, put it in reverse, and we started to back out. As we were reversing, the guy came around the side of the house. He looked at us with his shotgun, aimed it up in the air, and yelled, "Yeah, don't come back." Then he fired a shot into the air. My friend John screamed, and we peeled out of that driveway so fast. The entire drive home, we barely said a word to each other. We were all just in shock, the adrenaline still pumping. When we finally got back home, we started to decompress, and I looked over at John and said, "Yo, get on that website right now and write a comment telling people not to go to that house. If someone else goes there, they might actually get hurt, or worse." John agreed. He went on the site and wrote this big comment about what happened. It got a bunch of upvotes and replies, with other people saying things like, "Yeah, I went there a few months ago, and the same crazy guy chased us out. He's armed and dangerous. Don't go there." Apparently people knew about this guy, which was kind of annoying because no one had left a warning before we went. If I had known there was a dude with a shotgun living there, I wouldn't have gone near the place. But in the end, we were safe, and as far as I know, nobody got shot or seriously hurt there. After we wrote that comment, it became kind of well known in the local exploring community that you just don't go near that place. And 6 years later, the house got knocked down. I remember driving by with my friends on our way to a store and we decided to pass by the mansion. When we got there, it was just an empty plot of land. They had completely knocked it down. I don't know where that guy is today. Hopefully he found a job, got his own place, and isn't living in some abandoned building with a shotgun in his underwear anymore. But yeah guys, the moral of the story is, stay away from abandoned, creepy places. As fun as it might seem to explore, you could end up running into some seriously dangerous shit. So be safe, alright? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments below, and if you're new here, subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Peace. Yo, what's good guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. Today's story time is an interesting one, definitely a crazy one. Before I jump into this, I just want to say that I'm live right now, so if you want to come hang out, I'm leaking some new music, maybe playing some games, maybe just chatting. Check it out, first link in the description. Anyway, let's jump into today's story. This story takes place back when I was in 10th grade. This one is a bit different from the last one though. It involves me screwing up, and honestly, I screwed up pretty big this time. So, let's just get into it. It all starts off as a normal morning. I woke up really early to get ready for school, just doing my usual morning routine. I went out to the kitchen, and before I left to get on the bus, I checked the family calendar my mom kept on the wall. It was one of those big ass calendars that she'd write everything on, like her schedule, my brother's schedules, and even mine. It helped her keep everything organized. I looked at the calendar and I noticed something written down for Thursday. Austin, no school. I jumped for fucking joy, dude. You know that feeling when you find out you don't have school, like when there's a snow day or a holiday you didn't realize was coming up? That's exactly how I felt. It was the best feeling in the world. I was like, holy shit, no school today? I couldn't believe it. I ran into my mom's room and was like, Mom, do I have off today? She looked up at me, half awake, and said, yeah. I was so hyped, like, oh, awesome. She laughed a little and said, yeah, but I still have to go to work, so have fun sitting at home by yourself. I was like, I will. So, my mom got ready and left for work, and there I was, home alone for the day. I went into the living room, kicked back, put on some cartoons, and just started enjoying my day. But, you know how it goes. When you're a teenager with too much time on your hands, you start having some interesting thoughts. I started thinking, I'm home alone all day. My mom's at work, my brothers are at school, and I'm just here by myself. What could I do to make today a little more interesting? Now, around this time, I had some shrooms stashed under my bed from not too long ago. I thought, why not trip today? No one's gonna be home, no one's gonna know. So, I got up, ate a quick bowl of cereal because I hadn't eaten anything yet, and then went into my room to grab the shrooms. I sat back down in the living room and just started eating them. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just straight into it. I was ready for a solo trip and I had never done that before. It was my first time tripping entirely alone with no friends around, no distractions. Part of me was excited, but another part of me was nervous. Still, I just went for it. So, there I was, eating the shrooms thinking, this is gonna be chill, nothing's gonna happen. Yeah, I was wrong about that. Fast forward about an hour later and I was starting to feel it. I was getting giggly, seeing some visuals, you know, the usual start of a shroom trip. Everything seemed like it was going to be fine. And then, about 20 minutes later, my phone started ringing. I looked down and it was my mom calling me. I thought, that's weird. I was faced with two options. Either answer the phone and risk talking to my mom while I'm just starting to trip, or ignore it and keep enjoying myself. Naturally, I chose to ignore it. A few seconds later, my phone started ringing again. It was my mom calling me back. I thought, okay, maybe this is important if she's calling twice. But I still wasn't feeling confident enough to talk to her while I was starting to trip, so I ignored it again. Instead, I shot her a text. Hey, what's up? She texted me back right away. Don't. Hey, what's up me? Just answer the phone. And then she called again. I thought, okay fine, I guess I have to. So, I answered the phone. I was like, hey. And she said, guess what? I was like, what? And then she hit me with it. You have school today. I misread the calendar. It's actually tomorrow you have off, not today. I literally thought the shrooms were making me hear shit. I was like, what did you just say? And she repeated herself, you have school today. You don't have off until tomorrow. I was just sitting there, stunned. I said, well, I already missed the bus, so how do you expect me to get there? She replied, I don't know. Ride your bike, have someone pick you up, figure it out. I tried to think of an excuse. Mom, I can't. No one I know drives. That was a lie. I definitely had friends who drove. I just didn't want to go to school. She sighed. Okay, well, I'm going to ask my boss if I can come get you. And she hung up. I started to freak out. The trip was kicking in full force, and now I had to go to school. I ran into my room and started getting dressed as quickly as I could. I was definitely not in the right headspace for school, but I figured I had no choice. About 10 minutes later, I heard my mom pull into the driveway and beep the horn. I grabbed my stuff, went outside, and got in the car. She looked at me and said, "Alright, you ready for school?" I just mumbled, "Nope, not really." She laughed. "Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. I wrote it down wrong on the calendar. But hey, at least you have off tomorrow." I tried to play along. "Yeah, that's good." But in my head, I was thinking, there's no fucking way I'm tripping tomorrow, that's for sure. Let me tell you, that drive to school was one of the weirdest drives I've ever had. I was looking out the window, seeing things on the street that definitely shouldn't be moving. We passed this big ass mailbox, and I swear I saw it move its legs like it was walking. Obviously mailboxes don't have legs, but this one was definitely wiggling. Yeah, it was probably just the shrooms, but still, it was fucking weird. We finally got to school, and this is where things really went downhill. I walked into the building, went up to the front desk, and tried to explain myself. "Hey, sorry I'm late. My mom wrote down the wrong day on the calendar. She thought today was a day off." The lady at the front desk just nodded. "It's okay, go to your class." I walked down the hallway to my third period class. It was halfway through by the time I got there. I opened the door, and immediately every head in the room turned to look at me. I was tripping balls, and all these people were just staring at me. My teacher looked at me and said, "Austin, glad you could join us. Have a seat." I sat down at my desk, and she told me to turn to a certain page in the textbook. I started flipping through it, and for some reason, I could not find the page. I was looking over at other people's books, trying to follow along, but everything was moving. The pictures on the page were shifting, the words were dancing. It was so hard to focus. I leaned over to the girl sitting next to me and whispered, "Hey, what page are we on again?" She looked at me like I was an idiot. "Page 38, didn't you hear the teacher?" I just said, "Sorry." She rolled her eyes and repeated, "Page 38. The teacher noticed I was struggling and called me out. "Austin, are you okay?" I looked up and said, "Yeah, just couldn't find the page." She said, "Page 38. I nodded, "Okay, 38. I kept trying to find it, but I just couldn't. I don't know if it was the shrooms or if I was just being an idiot, but I couldn't do it. The teacher ended up coming over to my desk, flipping to the page for me, and then, as if things couldn't get worse, she asked me to read a section out loud to the entire class. I was tripping, trying to read these words that were moving all over the page, and now I had to read them out loud to everyone. I have public speaking anxiety even on a good day. You put me in front of 30 people on shrooms, and I might just pass out, but somehow, I did it. I don't know how it looked from anyone else's perspective, but I felt like I killed it. I read the paragraph without messing up too much, and no one laughed at me, so I think I did alright. After I finished reading, I let out the biggest sigh of relief. I was just happy it was over. I looked over at the girl next to me and smiled, just because I was so relieved. She looked at me. "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just happy that's over." She laughed. "Yeah, I don't like reading in front of the class either." For some reason, maybe it was the shrooms, maybe I was just being stupid, I decided to tell her the truth. I leaned in and said, "Hey, guess what?" She asked, "What?" I said, "I'm tripping right now." She looked at me, confused. "Tripping? Like, what do you mean?" I said, "Like, I took shrooms." She gave me the dirtiest look. "That's pretty stupid, to be honest. Don't do that anymore." And then she just turned away from me. Yeah, I learned my lesson real quick. Don't tell people you're tripping, especially not in school. The rest of the day was actually pretty chill compared to the first couple of classes. I had gym next, and I just kinda sat in the corner, doing nothing. I definitely got a 0 for participation, but it was better than trying to run a mile while on shrooms. By the time I got to my last few classes, I was feeling a lot more mellow. The trip was starting to wear off, and I felt okay enough to get through the rest of the day. But those first 2 periods were hell, pure anxiety and panic. The only other shitty thing that happened was later in the day, I got super nauseous and almost threw up at one point. But luckily, I managed to hold it together. The next day, which I actually had off, I didn't do shit. I just laid around, not even thinking about touching those shrooms. I wanted nothing to do with them after that. So, yeah, moral of the story. Don't do the shit I talked about in this story time because it led to a very unfun day. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video, I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's good everybody? It's Austin here, or Luna. It's been a minute since I've told a scary story on here, and honestly, I have quite a few of them to share if you couldn't already tell from the channel. The story I'm about to tell today is definitely one of my favorites. It was terrifying in the moment. Like legit, I was scared for my life, but now that it's all over, I can laugh about it a little more. I hope you'll enjoy this one, and if you do, please leave a like on the video, it helps out a lot. And without further ado, let's get into it. So today's story takes place back in the glorious year of 2017. At this point, I was living out in Los Angeles, California. It was a crazy time in my life, filled with friends, parties, and just the general craziness that comes with LA. But for this particular story, I was getting ready to head to Atlanta for a gaming event. I was super stoked because a bunch of my friends from YouTube were going to be there. Pretty much everyone I knew at the time was going, so it was going to be a huge reunion, which was exciting. The night before the trip, I was browsing Airbnb, trying to find a place to stay in Atlanta for the week. I didn't really know Atlanta very well. I had no clue what areas were good or bad. I was basically just looking at the pictures of these Airbnbs and trying to find something that looked decent and not outrageously priced. Some of them looked straight up sketchy, while others looked really nice. Eventually, I found a pretty sweet looking 3-bedroom house. It was definitely a little more than I needed since I was staying by myself, but I figured it could be good in case any of my friends wanted to crash with me during the week, so I booked it. Fast forward, and it's time for the trip. The night before the event started, I took a nighttime flight to Atlanta. I landed pretty late and caught an Uber from the airport to my Airbnb. Now, as the Uber turns down the street that my Airbnb is on, I immediately start to notice that this area is not great. A lot of the houses on the street looked abandoned, and the ones that weren't abandoned either looked like they were falling apart or had people actively working on them. The whole street had this sort of eerie, rundown vibe. I'm not trying to be that guy who complains about a neighborhood being too poor. This was more about feeling like I was not in the safest place, especially for the amount of money I paid. Like, the photos on Airbnb made it look like it was a mansion in the Hollywood Hills. Someone definitely knew their way around Photoshop. But anyway, I finally get dropped off, and the good news is the inside of the Airbnb was actually pretty nice. I unpacked my stuff, set up my gear, and then called up some of my friends to see what everyone was up to. Most of them were hanging out at another friend's Airbnb, so I decided to go hang with them for the night instead of staying in my creepy new house by myself. So, I Ubered over there and spent the night just chilling, laughing, and having a good time. That first night, nothing really happened. It was pretty chill. But it's on night 2 where things started to get a little weird. So the next morning, I got up, got ready, and went to the gaming event. It was a blast. Got to meet a lot of cool supporters, hang with friends, and just enjoy the event. After spending the day there, I came back to my Airbnb around 7 or 8 p.m., totally exhausted. I just wanted to chill, watch some Netflix, and get some sleep early because I hadn't slept much since I landed. So I get back, unlock the door, walk into the house, and throw myself onto the couch. I turn on some Netflix, just trying to zone out for a bit. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I see something move past the window. I swear I saw something just breeze past and I'm like, what the hell was that? Now, I'm not like one of those horror movie characters who ignores things like this. I'm not trying to get murdered, so I get up, walk over to the window, and try to look out. It's dark out there and I don't really see anything, so I open the window, try to get a better view, and once again, nothing. I think to myself, okay, probably just a bird or maybe a branch moving with the wind or something. So I close the window, lock it, and go back to watching Netflix. Maybe 10 minutes later, I see something move past the window again, and I'm thinking, okay, something is definitely off. I get up again, and this time I open the sliding glass door next to the window and step outside. I walk around the whole backyard. It's pretty big, so it takes me a couple minutes, and there's nobody there, nothing. No animals, no people, nothing out of place. So I think, alright, maybe I'm just tired and seeing things. I go back inside, lock everything up, and lay back down on the couch. I'm starting to doze off when out of nowhere I see something again. This time, it looks like a person, a full-on silhouette of someone walking past the window, and I'm not gonna lie, I was terrified. I immediately get up and walk to the window, but again, I can't see anything. But this time, I hear something, like faint voices coming from the backyard. I can't see anyone, but I definitely hear people talking. And now, I have 2 options. Go outside and investigate and risk running into whoever's out there, or just stay inside and hope for the best. I chose to stay inside. I sat back down on the couch, but I couldn't relax. I just kept hearing things, faint whispers, footsteps, something. Finally, after maybe 10 minutes of this, I decided I had to do something. So I called 911. I told them what was happening and they said they'd send someone over to check it out. The cops got there in about 15 minutes and during that whole time I just kept hearing things. Footsteps, rustling, whispering. But the moment I heard the police car pull into the driveway, the noises stopped. I walked over to the front door, let the cops in and took them to the backyard. They started looking around with their flashlights, checking every corner of the yard. I stayed inside, waiting and hoping that they wouldn't find anything too crazy. After about 15 minutes, they came back inside and one of the officers said, "Good news, kind of." I was like, okay, what does that mean? He told me that they didn't find anyone in the backyard, but they did find something strange. He asked me to follow him and he led me out to the back over to a shed that was at the far end of the yard. Behind the shed, there were 2 air mattresses, a couple of blankets, and 2 garbage bags full of what looked like personal belongings. It was pretty clear that someone, or a couple of people, had been living back there. The officer looked at me and said, "I think the voices you were hearing were probably some people living back here without permission." I was shocked. I told him I had no idea, and he said I should probably get in touch with the owner of the Airbnb. So I called the owner, but of course he didn't answer. The cop said, "Well, when you get a hold of him, let him know what's going on." Then he told me that they were going to move the mattresses and belongings off the property. He assured me that once these people saw that their stuff was gone, they'd probably move on to a new spot. I wasn't so sure about that. I mean, if I was living somewhere and suddenly all my stuff was gone, I'd be pretty pissed. I tried to explain that to the cop, but he just brushed it off. He said, "Trust me, I've seen this before. They'll move on." I wasn't convinced, but what could I do? After the cops left, I was alone again in this creepy Airbnb, and I was terrified. I started calling up some friends who were also in Atlanta for the event. I called my buddy Caleb, who was staying at another Airbnb, and told him what was happening. He was like, "Dude, what kind of sketchy place are you staying at? I'm coming over." About an hour later, Caleb showed up with a bag of his stuff, ready to crash at my place for the night, which made me feel a lot better. We were both sitting in the living room, kind of half watching Netflix, half dozing off, when suddenly we heard voices again. I tapped Caleb on the shoulder, and we both sat up, listening. The voices were getting closer, and then, out of nowhere, we heard 3 loud bangs on the sliding glass door. We both turned to look, and standing there was a man, clearly one of the people who'd been staying behind the shed. He looked furious. He started banging on the door harder, yelling, "Where's my stuff? Where the fuck is it? Give it back!" He was slamming his fists on the glass, trying to open the sliding door, and his voice was filled with anger. Then a woman showed up next to him, probably his girlfriend, and she started banging on the door too. They were hitting it so hard I thought the glass was going to shatter. I yelled through the door, "It's gone! The cops took it!" But that didn't seem to help. They just kept yelling and pounding on the glass. Caleb and I looked at each other, and we both knew we had to get out of there. We grabbed Caleb's keys, bolted for the front door, and ran out of the house as fast as we could. We jumped in his car, and Caleb peeled out of the driveway. As we were driving away, I turned around to see if they were chasing us or anything, but I didn't see anyone in the front yard. They were probably still in the back trying to get in. As soon as we were a safe distance away, I called the cops again and explained what had happened. The dispatcher stayed on the phone with me as Caleb and I looped back around to my Airbnb. We parked on the street, and a few minutes later, the cops arrived. They did another inspection of the property, and thankfully, the door hadn't been broken. The people were gone, nowhere in sight. The cops suggested I stay somewhere else for the rest of my trip, and honestly, I didn't need much convincing. They even gave me some recommendations for nice hotels in the area. After the cops left, I packed up my stuff, threw it in Caleb's car, and he drove me to one of the hotels the cops recommended. I booked a room for the rest of the week, and Caleb, being the real MVP, stayed the night with me at the hotel to make sure everything was cool. He ended up crashing on the couch while I passed out on the bed, finally feeling a bit safer. The next day, while I was at the gaming event, the owner of the Airbnb finally called me back. He apologized, said he didn't know any of this was happening, and actually ended up refunding my entire stay, which I really appreciated. He didn't have to do that, but it was definitely the right thing to do. The rest of the trip was pretty good. I stayed in the hotel, enjoyed the event, and had a great time with my friends. But I learned a valuable lesson. Always do your research before booking an Airbnb. Don't just look at the pretty pictures, make sure the area is safe, read the reviews, do your homework. So yeah, that's the story of how I ended up with some very angry people trying to break into my Airbnb. It was definitely one of the scariest experiences I've ever had, but I'm glad it's over. If you enjoyed this story time, please leave a like on the video and feel free to share your own story times in the comments below. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I'll catch you all later. Peace. Yo, what's up guys? It's Austin here, or Luna, whatever you want to call me. Today's story time is one I've been wanting to tell for a while now. But before we jump into it, I just want to say, the new merch is still out. I think it's pretty fire. If you like any of it, go check it out. Cop it, I'd really appreciate it. If not, that's totally cool too. Alright, let's get into the story. This one is about my old babysitter. If you've been following my channel for a while, you might remember some of the babysitter story times I've done in the past. Funny enough, after I posted one of those videos, my old babysitter actually reached out to me. She was like, "OMG, I miss you, let's hang out." And we ended up becoming friends again. So me, her, and another friend of mine decided to meet up at this restaurant. We were hanging out, and they had a bar there, so my old babysitter decides to go grab some drinks. And let's just say, she got tipsy pretty quick. Actually, scratch that, she got drunk. She was at the bar, calling us over, yelling, "Come here, come here." So we go over, and we're just sitting there, hanging out with her. We weren't drinking, just keeping her company. Eventually, she decided to stop drinking because she didn't want to get too drunk to walk. We all decided to leave because we were bored of the restaurant. My friend was driving, he hadn't had anything to drink, neither did I. So we get in the car and start driving around, listening to music. It was nighttime, so there were a lot of people out, heading to bars and restaurants. And my babysitter, who's in the back seat, sticks her head out of the window and starts yelling at random people. Just stuff like, "I love you," or "Hey, what's up?" You know, nothing mean, just random stuff. But it was a bit obnoxious, and I was worried we'd get pulled over. I mean, whenever I'm walking down the street and someone honks or yells at me, it's the worst feeling in the world. So, I tell her to chill out because there are cops around and we don't want to draw any attention. She agrees and stops yelling. It's kind of funny though. Back in the day, she used to babysit me, and now here I am trying to keep her out of trouble, like the roles have reversed. But no matter how hard we tried to be the responsible ones, it didn't work out that way. So, my friend decides he's thirsty and wants to get a drink. We pull into a gas station, he parks, and he runs inside to grab something. He tells us to behave while he's gone, and I turn the music up, just chilling, singing along. Everything's going fine until I see a police car pull into the lot. The cop parks right next to us and we make eye contact. I wave, he waves back, and he walks into the store. He seemed like a nice guy, so I'm thinking, alright, no big deal. But then my babysitter's like, "I'm hot, I need to get out and walk around." I'm like, "No, just stay in the car. My friend will be back in 2 minutes. We'll turn on the AC." She's like, "No, I need to stretch my legs." And I'm thinking, this is a bad idea. But she starts unlocking the door and getting out. She's really drunk, and there's such a thing as public intoxication. If you're acting a fool in public while drunk, you can get arrested. In my head, I'm just praying, please don't cause a scene. The second she gets out, she yells, "I feel amazing." I'm like, oh no. I tell her, "Hey, get back in the car." She's like, "No, fuck you." I'm like, "Alright, I'm sorry," trying to keep her calm. But right after that, the cop comes out of the store and sees her. He's like, "How you doing?" She's like, "Good." He's like, "You having a good night?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm having a great night." And I'm just sitting there like, please be nice. Thankfully, the cop was a cool guy. He chuckles and says, "Looks like you're a little tipsy tonight, huh?" I'm like, "Not me, I haven't had anything to drink." He nods. "Oh, just her then?" She's like, "Uh-huh." He's like, "Alright, well, just be safe tonight, okay?" And I'm thinking, great, we're in the clear. But then she says something I did not expect. Fuck the police. I immediately put my hands over my face like, oh no. In my head, I'm just thinking, why? Why would you say that? I wanted to apologize to the officer, tell him she's drunk and doesn't know what she's saying, but before I could say anything, the cop flips. He goes from good cop to bad cop real quick. He's like, "Excuse me? What did you just say?" She's like, "Nothing." He's like, "No, say it again." And then she turns around and tries to run away from him. She slips on some pebbles and falls. The cop runs over, helps her up, and then cuffs her. He puts her in the back of his car, and I'm just sitting there like, oh no. Right at that moment, my friend comes out of the gas station, sipping on a Fanta, and he's like, "What the hell's going on?" The cop tells him, "Your friend is under arrest." My friend looks at me, "Austin, what happened?" I'm like, "She's just too drunk." The cop nods, "Yep, exactly." Honestly, if she hadn't tried to run, she probably would have been fine, but the minute she ran and fell, it was over. The cop tells us, "Alright, you guys have a good one. She'll probably be out by tomorrow," and he drives off. My friend and I are left there with so many questions, like, when is she getting out? How long are they gonna keep her? But the cop left so quick, we didn't even have time to ask. We get back in the car and drive to my friend's house. We're just sitting there for hours, wondering what's gonna happen. We ask his parents and they're like, she'll probably be out by morning, but she'll have to pay a fine. So, we go to sleep, and the next morning, I wake up to a new group chat from her. It's me and my friend, and she just says, "I'm out, beaches." I started laughing so hard, I ran upstairs to show my friend, woke him up with it, and he's like, "No way." She ended up getting out that morning, just like his parents said. She had to pay a fine, but she was okay. I didn't ask her how much it was, but she was out, and that's what mattered. Still, it could have gone a lot worse depending on the situation. Moral of the story? Don't ever do what she did. Ever. I wasn't even sure if I should tell this story because I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but she told me it was cool. So, old babysitter, if you're watching this, I hope you never get arrested again. It's always fun hanging out with you, and my subscribers love hearing about you. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this story time. Before I end the video, one last plug. My Instagram is super close to 200k. If you guys could drop me a follow, I'd really appreciate it. No pressure though, I'll leave the link in the description. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this story time. If you did, leave a like, share your story times in the comments, and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Okay, so this one's a very, very good one, and one of the funniest stories I've been holding onto for years now. Honestly, I've been waiting to tell it for so long that I don't even know why I waited. I think sometimes I like to save some of my best stories until the very last possible moment, because they feel like those ultimate stories that could end everything on a high note. But, to be real with you guys, there's never gonna be a last possible moment. I'm probably going to be telling stories on here until the day I fucking croak, whether they're super insane or just mundane as hell. Like, imagine in the future I'm here like, I got a cappuccino today. Parenthesis, insane. Anyway, I'm just messing around, but seriously, today I've got a crazy story for you. Hope you enjoy it, leave a like on the video if you do, and let's jump into it. So, today's story takes place just a couple of years ago, which makes it kind of recent compared to some of the older stories I've been telling lately. I remember it was around Christmas time, and honestly, that's why I wanted to tell it now. It was right around this time, maybe a week or two before Christmas, and my family was doing the usual holiday routine. You see, we have 2 Christmases every year, one at my mum's house and one at my dad's house. That's how it's always been since my parents split up. So, I get 2 Christmas dinners, which, honestly, no complaints there. Anyway, the story all starts off as a regular day. It was the day that I was going to my dad's side of the family for Christmas dinner, and I was pretty hyped about it. I hadn't seen my dad's side of the family in a while, and it was going to be cool hanging out with my dad too. I hadn't seen him in a week or two, so I was excited. You know that kind of feeling, right? So, fast forward to the time I was supposed to head over for dinner. Dinner was set for like 5:30 or 5:45, and I actually got there really fucking early, which... yeah, if you know me, that's not my usual vibe. I'm usually the one showing up late to family events, or really any kind of event, to be honest. My time management isn't exactly top tier, as you can probably tell from my upload schedule. But that day, I just ended up being super early. I don't know why. Maybe the holiday spirit hit me harder or something. Anyway, I got to my dad's place at like 4:30. I walk in, and it's just me and my dad, since I was the first one there. He's in the kitchen, finishing up some sides for dinner. When I walked in, he looked way too happy to see me. Like, this dude was fucking geeking. Huge smile, all giggly, super happy vibes. And don't get me wrong, my dad is always happy to see me, but there was just something different about it this time. He was just extra happy. You know that kind of happy where it almost makes you suspicious, like, what the fuck is going on here? Anyway, after we say our hellos, I realize I'm so early that I might as well help him out in the kitchen, so I jump in to help him finish cooking the sides for dinner, you know, just being the good son for once. But as I'm helping him, I start noticing that something is definitely off. Like, the man could not get a single thing right. It was time to season the potatoes, right? The recipe said a pinch of salt, and this man picks up like an entire fucking handful of salt. I'm like, no dad, that's way too much, put it down. And he's like, no, it's a pinch. I'm like, dude, that's not a pinch, that's a fucking snowstorm of salt. So I end up doing it myself, just to make sure we don't end up with salt brick potatoes. And then, out of nowhere, he starts grabbing other random ass spices that aren't even in the recipe. Like, he's reaching for paprika, cumin, cinnamon, just throwing all kinds of shit on the counter. I'm like, dad, chill the fuck out. I'll handle the seasoning. We're not about to have a Drake and Josh moment here, where someone's getting dosed with cumin and having an allergic reaction. Just relax. Fast forward 5 minutes, and my dad goes to take something out of the oven. I don't even remember what it was, some side dish, but there was still like 8 minutes left on the oven timer. I'm like, Dad, it's not ready yet. And he's like, nah, it says 0, it's done. I look at the timer, and it clearly says 8. I'm like, no, that says 8. If it was 0, it'd be beeping. And he just kind of goes, oh, okay, and steps back, staring into the abyss like he's contemplating life itself. I'm looking at him like, are you good? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm gonna lay down for a second. And then he just walks away. So I'm left to finish the sides by myself. I get everything done in like 10 minutes, and the whole time I'm just thinking, what the fuck is up with my dad? I know he smokes a bit here and there, so I figure maybe he smoked before I got here and he's just too high. But even then, this is a different level. This isn't your usual, oops, I'm a little too baked situation. This is like, I don't know what numbers are anymore, kind of high. But whatever, I let it slide. I figure he's tired or maybe dealing with some anxiety from being too high, and I move on. Fast forward about 15 minutes, and the rest of the family starts to arrive. My brothers, my cousin, and I decide to go into my dad's room to let him know people are here. And I shit you not, this man is curled up in bed in the fetal position, looking absolutely terrified. I'm like, hey, everyone's here. You wanna come say hi? And he's like, yeah, just give me a minute. I'm like, are you okay? And he goes, I'm having a bit of a bad time right now. So now I'm like, what the hell did you do? Did you smoke too much or something? And he's like, yeah, I smoked a little too much. I'm like, okay, that's what I thought. So I ask him if he needs water or anything, and he says yes. I go grab some water from the kitchen, and my cousin sees me. He's like, what's up? Where's your dad? I'm like, he's in the room. Got a little too high before dinner. Everyone starts laughing, obviously, because it's just so unexpected. I go back into my dad's room with the glass of water, and now this dude is off the bed, staring out the window like he's in a fucking thriller movie. I'm like, Dad, what the fuck is it now? And he goes, did you hear that outside? I'm like, hear what? And he's like, you didn't hear that loud bang? It sounded like an explosion. I'm like, no, Dad, I didn't hear shit. It's quiet as hell out there. He's like, no, I swear there was something. I'm like, alright, well, maybe there was, but I don't see anything. He's like, yeah, me neither. So he sits back down on the bed and I hand him the water. He starts sipping it and I'm like, how much did you smoke? He's like 2 joints. I'm like, that shouldn't be doing this to you. You've smoked more than that before and been fine. He's like, alright, I've got to be honest, something else happened. Now I'm intrigued. I'm like, okay, what happened? And he's like, I may have, not just smoked. I'm like, what does that mean, Dad? He's like, I ate a couple, things. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Chicken tenders, Oreos, mozzarella sticks. What the fuck did you eat? He's like, come on, you know what I'm talking about. And honestly, it wasn't clicking for me. I had never seen my dad do shrooms or even talk about them, so I genuinely had no idea. I'm like, did you eat something you're allergic to? And he's like, no, mushrooms. Immediately, my face lights up. I'm like, no fucking way. He's like, yeah. I'm like, when did you start doing that? He's like, I've always kind of microdosed. I was just trying to have a little microdose today, lift the mood a bit, but I overdid it. I'm like, wait a minute, you said you ate a couple. What's a couple? He's like, I don't know, like a handful, or maybe some more. I don't know. I'm like, Dad, do you know what a couple means? It means fucking 2. If you ate 2, I don't think you'd be having this kind of reaction. He's like, yeah, I don't know how many I ate. I'm like, alright, lay down. I'll take care of dinner. Come out whenever you're ready, okay? Just holler if you need anything. I'll be out there entertaining the family since they're all here now. He's like, alright. So, I go back to the living room and I say hi to everyone. I start setting the dinner table, getting the plates out, making sure everything's ready. Then the food gets laid out and we all sit down to eat. The whole time, everyone keeps asking, where's your dad? Where's your dad? And I didn't want to blow his cover, so I just keep saying, he doesn't feel good, he's a little out of it. Finally, about 20 minutes later, while we're in the middle of eating, my dad comes out of his room and just straight up tells everyone, sorry, I microdosed a little too much, and the whole table fucking loses it. Everyone is dying laughing, including me. I couldn't help it. I had this huge smile on my face because not only was this one of the funniest moments ever, but I also knew it was going to be one of the best stories to end up on my channel. After that, we had a wonderful Christmas dinner. My dad eventually calmed down and joined in, and we all enjoyed the rest of our night. And my dad learned a valuable lesson. If you're going to microdose, maybe keep it actually micro, not whatever the hell he did that night. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the story time. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace. Yo, what's up, guys? It's Austin here, or Luna. So today's story time is definitely an interesting one, and honestly, it still cracks me up when I think back on it. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. If you do, leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Also, I'll be live on Kick at some point tonight, so I'll leave that link in the description if you want to come hang out. Not sure what time yet, but I'll be on at some point. Anyway, let's get into today's story time. This one takes place when I was 17 years old. Back then, I was just living my life, enjoying it as much as possible. I had my YouTube channel going, things were good, and I wasn't dating anyone at the time, just single, focused on making videos and hanging out with friends. It was summer, and I was living it up. So, it all started off as a regular summer day. I had just woken up around noon. You know how summer is. No alarms, just letting yourself sleep in. I was chilling in my room, not really sure what to do with my day. I didn't have anything planned. I was just in one of those open, carefree summer vacation moods. So I grabbed my phone and hit up some of my close friends like, yo, what are you guys up to today? Anyone down to do something? Lucky for me, 3 of my friends were free and down to hang out. They came over to my house and we were just chilling there, talking about random stuff and watching some YouTube videos. After about 2 hours, we were getting pretty bored. We had exhausted all of our typical options for things to do at home, and we were trying to think of something else. But, of course, like every bored teenager, we just ended up deciding to go to the mall. We thought, you know what, let's just hit up the mall, walk around, check out some stores, maybe buy some stuff if we like it. It'll be something to do, at least. So, we all hopped into one of my friend's cars and we drove down to the mall. It wasn't far, like 5 or 10 minutes away. We got there, parked, and went inside. We started walking around, doing mall stuff. We checked out a couple of stores. One of my friends bought a hoodie and I grabbed a couple of t-shirts from another store. We were just browsing, joking around, and not doing anything out of the ordinary. But then, about 30 minutes into being at the mall, things started to feel off. We noticed that every store we walked into, the people working there would look at us kind of funny. Like they'd look at us, then quickly look away, almost like they were scared of us or grossed out by us. I don't really know how to explain it. It was just weird. And then, in almost every store we went into, one of the workers would pick up the phone, start dialing, and talk while glancing at us. At first, we didn't think much of it. We figured maybe they were just doing regular work stuff, but it kept happening, over and over again. It was like every store we walked into, someone would immediately get on the phone and give us a look. Eventually, it got to the point where we all noticed it and started getting a little bit paranoid. We were like, why does it seem like they're calling someone on us? It didn't make sense because we weren't doing anything wrong. We were just walking around, shopping and talking. We weren't stealing, we weren't being loud. We were just being normal. But the vibe was off and it was starting to make us feel uncomfortable. So, we decided that it was probably best to just leave the mall. We figured whatever was going on, it wasn't worth sticking around for. So, we walked out of the store we were in and started heading for the main entrance. We were almost to the exit doors when, out of nowhere, we got surrounded. I'm not even exaggerating, like 10 cops and security guards surrounded us. There were 2 cop cars parked out front in the parking lot, blocking the entrance, and then 2 cops behind us inside the mall, along with a bunch of security guards. There was literally nowhere for us to go. We were stuck between the exit and the mall, with no way out. I was so confused. I remember thinking, what the hell did we do? Why are there cops here? I knew for a fact that I didn't steal anything. I hadn't done anything wrong. And as far as I knew, my friends hadn't done anything either. So I asked, what's going on? Why are we being stopped? One of the cops looked at me and said, can you come with us, please? We need to ask you some questions. I asked, why? We didn't do anything. But he just repeated himself, just come with us. They led us into the security office of the mall, and once we got inside, they put all of us in handcuffs and sat us down. I was like, what is going on? Why are we being arrested? The whole time, none of us knew what was happening. It was like being in a nightmare. The cop who seemed to be in charge sat down in front of us and said, do you guys know why you're here today? I said, clearly not, because I've been asking you what the fuck's going on. He just looked at me and said, alright, calm down. Listen, we got some calls that people were stealing from Victoria's Secret. They said it was a group of males and the description matches you guys, so we brought you in to make sure you're not the ones who did it. I was in shock. I looked at him and said, wait a minute, you think we robbed Victoria's Secret? He didn't answer, and that's when my friends lost it. They started laughing their asses off. I mean, it was such a ridiculous accusation. Like, we were 4 dudes walking around the mall, and now we were being accused of stealing bras and panties from Victoria's Secret. It was so absurd that we couldn't help but laugh. The cop wasn't amused though. He got mad and said, what's so funny? Stop laughing. I looked at him and said, listen, we didn't steal anything. We didn't even go in Victoria's Secret. I mean, look at us. Why would we steal bra and lingerie? He just stared at me and said, we're not saying you definitely stole anything. We're just saying you matched the description of the suspects and we're making sure you're not them. I pointed at the security cameras in the office and said, you literally have cameras everywhere in this mall. Roll the footage back and you'll see we never even went near Victoria's Secret. You can let us go after you see that. He nodded and said, yeah, we're working on that. But we wanted to get you in here before you left the mall. I replied, well, I think it's a little late for that. The actual people who did it are probably long gone by now. He just gave me a smug look and said, we'll see about that. They searched us, went through our pockets, our bags, everything. Of course, they didn't find anything because we hadn't stolen anything. All they found were the things we had bought at other stores, and we had receipts for everything. After they finished searching us, they finally started looking at the security camera footage. I remember watching them pull up the footage on the monitors, and I could see it from where I was sitting. They rewound the footage and found a group that actually stole from Victoria's Secret. And guess what? It wasn't even a group of all guys like they said, it was 2 girls and 1 guy. Whoever gave the description of a group of males must have been blind because it wasn't us at all. When the cop saw the footage, he looked pretty stupid. He realized they had made a mistake and he unhandcuffed us. He apologized saying, "Sorry for the mix-up guys, we got the wrong people." I said, "It's fine," but I was still pissed. I asked him if they knew if the actual thieves were still in the mall and he said he didn't know. They were going to look for them. I don't know how they didn't know with all the cameras in that place, but somehow they didn't. Anyway, they let us go and we walked out of the mall, finally free. We got into my friend's car and left, and on the way, we grabbed some food. The whole rest of the day, we couldn't stop talking about what had happened. I mean, it was insane. We got accused of stealing lingerie from Victoria's Secret. I mean, come on. Do I look like the type of guy who's out here stealing Victoria's Secret pajamas and lingerie? Don't answer that. But seriously, it was such a ridiculous situation. The story doesn't end there though. A couple of weeks later, I went back to the mall with one of the same friends I was with when we got arrested. We decided to go to the security office just out of curiosity. We wanted to see if they had caught the actual people who stole that day. We went up to one of the security guards who had been there that day, a random guard, not the cop, and I said, "Hey man, remember us?" He looked at me and said, "Yeah, I remember you. You were the kids we handcuffed by mistake." I said, "Yeah, that's us. Did you guys ever catch the group that actually stole?" He looked around, almost like he wasn't sure if he should answer, and said, "I don't know if I can talk about that." I said, "Hey, no worries. If you can't tell me, that's fine. Have a good one, man." I turned around to leave, and as we were walking away, I heard him say, "Hey, wait." I turned around and he smiled at me and nodded. That was all I needed. They caught the people who actually stole that day. It wasn't us. So, in the end, I guess it was a happy ending. We didn't get arrested for something we didn't do, and we didn't get in any serious trouble. They realized their mistake and let us go, and the real thieves got caught. I'm sure they got banned from the mall and probably had some other consequences to deal with. If there's a moral to this story, it's pretty simple. Don't shoplift. You'll just end up getting into trouble, and it's really not worth it. But yeah, that's it for today's story time. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video. It really helps me out. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all later. Peace.